Chapter 48. The smile on Miss Meng's face had long since disappeared. You've misjudged me. I'm already 22 years old this year. My name is Zi Qingming. You could just call me by my name from now on. Don't call me Miss Meng or Miss Meng. Our cooking department is one of the smaller departments in the school. Other than the magic department, which has the least number of students, there are only a little more than 1,000 people in the entire department. We are divided into 5 grades, and each grade has 5 classes. The classes are divided into passion for cooking, cold dishes, pastries, medicinal cuisine, and local snacks. Most of the classes are hot dishes cooking, accounting for about 1/3 of the students in each grade. As for me, I'm a 5th-year student of the cold dishes cooking department. At the same time, I'm also a knife teacher. So, you can think whatever you want. Knife teacher? It seems like she hadn't misjudged her. She was also an expert in knife skills. If there was a chance, she really would like to compare notes with her. Nian Bing thought as she followed Zi Qingming to the entrance of the school. When the 4 students in charge of guarding the entrance saw her, they immediately straightened their backs. Their eyes were filled with respect as they said in unison, "Greetings, senior." Zi Qingming only nodded and didn't stop. She led Nian Bing into the school. Why do they call you senior and not teacher? Nian Bing asked the question in her heart. Zi Qingming glanced at her and said, because I'm a student of the martial skills department. I'm also a 5th-year student. Naturally, they call me senior. Oh, I forgot to tell you. In this school, as long as you have enough ability to pass the exams, you can study several majors. Of course, tuition is a must. You also need to pass the exams. Nian Bing's heart skipped a beat. She felt Zi Qingming's cold aura and said, I think you should major in martial skills. Is the cooking department your elective? His eyes didn't stop on Zi Qingming's body. Instead, he looked at the huge field in front of him. There were at least a few thousand people moving around. Some were chatting, some were comparing notes, and some were walking. Thousands of people in this field, but it seemed very lonely. The huge field was paved with some unknown material. The ground was a dark gray and seemed to be very hard. Around the sports field, there were buildings as tall as 8 stories. Those should be the teaching buildings. It was the first time Nian Bing had seen such a tall building, and her curiosity towards Lanmeng Academy couldn't help but increase. Zi Qingming looked at Nian Bing in surprise. How did you know? Nian Bing smiled and said, Would you believe me if I said it was a guess? Of course, he was just guessing, but his guess was well-founded. When Zi Qingming had introduced the Lanmeng Academy, she had first mentioned the martial arts department, not the cooking department. Moreover, when she was talking about the glory of the martial arts department, the expression on her face was clearly a little proud, but when she talked about the cooking department, her expression was much calmer. Nian Bing was good at observation. She could make the right judgment from the little expression that she inadvertently revealed. Zi Qingming didn't pursue the matter. The two of them walked through the sports field in silence. She brought Nian Bing directly to the Western Teaching Building. When they arrived in front of the teaching building, Zi Qingming didn't bring Nian Bing inside. Instead, she took him around the building and went to the back. The teaching building outside is mainly the teaching area of the several major departments. The cooking department is in that building. Don't forget, the dormitories are also in that building. It was a 5-story building. If it was anywhere else, a 5-story building would be considered very tall, but compared to the 8-story buildings outside, it really wasn't much. The entire building didn't look small. The students coming and going were all wearing the same dark blue uniform as the students outside, but the small signs on their faces all had the word cooking written on them. Zi Qingming brought Nian Bing up to the 5th floor and arrived at the door of an office. She directly pushed open the door and entered. Nian Bing followed behind her. Before he could see the situation inside, he heard a scream. Who is so unruly, coming in without knocking? Little Meng, so it's you. You want to scare me to death. Can you please knock on the door in the future? Nian Bing peeked in from behind Zi Qingming and saw a man and a woman tidying up their untidy clothes. The man looked to be in his 50s and was a little hunchbacked. There was only a circle of red hair on his head, and the center was bald like a barren hillside. He had small eyes, a bulbous nose, and a big mouth. Almost all of the adjectives used to describe an ugly appearance were used on him. What was strange was that the woman who was being intimate with him before looked much younger. She looked to be in her 30s. Her appearance was good, and her figure was not bad. At this time, her face was red as she tied her bra. Zi Qingming coldly said, "Great love sage, I've brought you a new student." The hunchback man coughed a few times and said, "You can call the shots on the new student. Why did you have to bring her here? All right, you can come in. Little Ee, you go out first. I'll come find you when I have time." Hearing him call out Little Ee in such a coquettish voice, Nian Bing really had the urge to turn around and leave. Was this the head of the cooking department? The middle-aged woman threw a coquettish glance at the head of the department, as if she didn't see the handsome Nian Bing. She straightened her clothes and calmly walked away. Zi Qingming seemed to be accustomed to this place, and her expression didn't change. The hunchback department head coughed and said, "Come, sit down first. My office is a little messy." It was indeed messy, and not just a little. The entire large office was scattered everywhere, and there was even a small puddle of water on the table. But the air in the office was still fresh. Zi Qingming and Nian Bing walked into the room. The department head cleaned up the table a few times, and then his eyes fell on Nian Bing. "To be able to make little Ming personally bring you here, it seems you have some skill. Young man, what can you do?" Nian Bing coughed, but still maintained a smile on her face. "I just learned how to cook for a few days in the past. I wanted to come to your school to learn how to cook." The department head's eyes turned to Zi Qingming, but Zi Qingming coldly said, "Don't look at me. Have you ever seen a person who only learned how to cook for a few days know how to cook? I'll leave him to you. Do as you see fit." After saying that, as if she didn't want to stay in this room for a moment longer, she turned around and left. Hearing the words golden word illusion, the department head's originally dim eyes lit up. Golden word illusion. You know how to use one of the 5 famous knives? The golden word illusion? Nian Bing looked at the department head's protruding hands and said, "You can say that. It's just that I haven't mastered it yet." He wasn't being modest. Whether it was the golden word illusion or the dance of the dragon, he still had a long way to go before he reached the peak. But now, he wasn't at the stage where he could rely only on practice. Just like Cha Ji said, what he needed now was enlightenment. "Was it Cha Ji who sent you to find me?" The department head sat back in his seat, but his words caused Ling Nian Bing's body to tremble. With a faint smile, he said, "Besides old Cha, I'm afraid no one else can teach a 20-year-old to use the golden word illusion. You don't need to be surprised. I really didn't expect that after old Cha disappeared for 20 years, there would finally be news of him again. You know my master?" Nian Bing's voice was no longer balanced. The old man in front of her gave her an unfathomable feeling. The department head smiled and said, "Didn't your master mention perverted camel Zishio to you? That old man can't have forgotten an old friend, right?" As soon as the words perverted camel Zishio entered her ears, Nian Bing suddenly remembered something Cha Ji had said to her. It was an evaluation of the chefs of his era. In his era, there were 5 most outstanding chefs, known as the 5 gods of cookery. They had the nicknames of Ghost, Lie, Camel, Spirit, and Meow. Among them, the Meow god of cookery was the master of Ming Yuan and Ming Hui. He was also known as the Immortal of Cookery. He was best at small craftsmanship, as well as making noodles. And her master, Cha Ji, was the head of the 5 gods of cookery. The 5 of them had gathered 3 times to rank. Those 3 times were also known as the most powerful peak showdown in the history of the cooking world. Ghost Chef Cha Ji used his uncanny craftsmanship to obtain the final victory by a small margin each time, while the other 4 gods of cookery were only slightly different in ability. When Cha Ji evaluated the camel god of cookery, his expression was very strange. He said, "Perverted camel Zishio is the most unique of the 5 of us. That guy's cooking skills are not only brilliant, but also strange. Maybe you don't believe it, but the famous dishes he is best at are all inspired by women. Perverted camel Zishio, perverted camel Zishio." Who would have thought that the camel god of cookery, who was ranked 3rd among the 5 gods of cookery, was actually the dean of this cooking academy? Nian Bing hurriedly bowed to Zixio and said, Senior Zixio, so you are the famous camel god of cookery. This junior is really rude. Zixio said somewhat impatiently. Enough. I hate these vulgar manners the most. Kid, how long have you been learning cooking from old man Cha Ji? Where's he now? In these 20 years, he hasn't been teaching at all. The cooking world outside has changed a lot. Nian Bing was sorrowful. Recalling his master's teachings, he couldn't help but take a deep breath. Senior Zixio, my master has passed away. He died before I left. I have been learning from him for 8 years. Nian Bing didn't dare to forget his teachings for a moment. Senior Zixio, since you are an old friend of my master, can you tell me who made the bet with my master and made him lose miserably and break his tendons? Camel chef Zixio rolled his eyes. Old man Cha Ji is dead? Good, he's dead. In the future, there will be one less person in front of me to suppress me. Die. Good, why am I not dead yet? Although he was cursing, Nian Bing could clearly see that his protruding knuckles, which should have been extremely stable, were actually trembling slightly. For a top chef, this was almost an impossible situation. Tears flickered in Zixio's eyes, but he didn't shed any tears. He sat there in a daze like a statue. Senior Z, are you all right? My master has already passed away, but when he passed away, he was very peaceful. Don't be sad. Looking at Zixio's appearance, Nian Bing understood that although the old man in front of him had fought with his master all his life, there was still a deep friendship between them. If you're in trouble, I'll be fine. Damn it, old man Cha Ji died so early. I don't know how much of his skills you learned. If the ghost chef skills are lost, even if I go to the underworld, I won't forgive him. Kid, do you want to know who forced your master to sever his tendons? Good. As long as you can beat me in cooking, I'll tell you. Otherwise, don't even think about it. I, lustful camel Zixio, am a man of my word. There is absolutely no possibility of bending the rules. I will first arrange for you to attend classes in the 5th grade. After a year, if you still can't reach a level where you can compete with me in cooking, then you can scram. Nian Bing respectfully said, Senior Z, I think we don't have to wait that long. I will challenge you now. I hope you will keep your word. After you lose, tell me the situation of the challenger. Now, good kid, you're as arrogant as your dead master. Are you very capable? Didn't your master tell you what I'm best at? Camel Chef's voice was full of arrogance. Nian Bing smiled. Although Zixio was constantly cursing Cha Ji, he understood that the relationship between this camel chef and his master was extremely deep. Senior Zixio, please forgive me for being disrespectful. At that time, this was what my master said about you. He said that lustful camel Zixio, that old thing, other than being able to perform a few jade screen condensation and tearing apart the heavy eagle hand, his other skills were not worth mentioning. Furthermore, the creativity he got from women was not bad. Damn it, this old hunchback is much uglier than me, but there are still women who don't open their eyes who like him. To put it simply, he's a cripple's asshole. Evil. Nian Bing completely imitated Cha Ji's tone. She vividly described it, as if Cha Ji had personally said it here. Hearing this, Camel Chef Zixio's face turned green and red. Good Cha Ji, you're already dead and you're still saying bad things about me. You're the cripple's asshole. You actually dared to judge me like this in front of the younger generation. Just wait for me to dig up your grave. Hearing Nian Bing's words, Camel Chef Zixio immediately flew into a rage. He pointed at Nian Bing's nose and jumped up and down while angrily cursing. However, in the end, he couldn't control his tears and they flowed down his angry face. Nian Bing seemed to not hear Camel Chef's insults. She lowered her head and said, Master said that only you can use the jade screen condensation, the last of the 5 great blades, to the perfect state. This is something that he can't compare to. The 5 great blades are actually not ranked first or last. As long as you can reach the perfect state, you'll be at the peak of the cooking world. He also said that your heavy eagle hand, which is ranked second among the 7 great forbidden techniques, is the only technique that can be used to cook dishes. He can't compare to you. Just based on the subtle control of the power in your hands, you're definitely number 1 on the continent. Wiping away the tears on his face, Zixio snorted and said, "That's more like it. Even if your master was here right now, he might not be able to compare to me. You brat, you've only learned cooking for a few years, and you want to challenge me? It's still a bit too early. How about this? Since I know how to use the word embroidery, I reckon that I've also learned some superficial knowledge of the dance of the dragon song. I'll first learn from the 5th grade cooking class of the Academy's cooking department. At the same time, I'll be like Xiao Ming, a knife technique teacher. Wait until you can surpass Xiao Ming in knife technique and her brother Zi Qingjian in technique. Then I'll give you a chance. She and her brother have learned cooking from me for more than 10 years. They've respectively inherited my heavy eagle hand and jade screen condensation techniques. Although they're still a bit lacking, there are few opponents in the younger generation. As long as you can beat them, you'll be able to compare to at least 70% of my cooking skills." Nian Bing smiled slightly and said, "Then I'll listen to your arrangements. However, I think that it won't be long before I can compare notes with you." Zixio looked up and down at Nian Bing and said, "It seems that you have a lot of confidence in yourself." Nian Bing said indifferently, "As the successor of the ghost chef, if I don't even have this bit of confidence, then wouldn't I be undermining my master's reputation?" When Jia Ji had first introduced her to camel chef Zixio, he had said that Zixio was extremely arrogant. Unless she was able to subdue him in his field of expertise, he would always be arrogant and overbearing. Therefore, Nian Bing's tone gradually became less courteous. Zixio stood up and said, "You're already considered a student here. 1 year, 2 semesters. Each semester's tuition is 10 gold coins, accommodation is 5 gold coins, food is 5 gold coins, a total of 20 gold coins. As a guest teacher, your income will be 5 gold coins per month. I won't charge you any money. However, you can expect me to pay you a salary. As for the classes you want to take, you can choose them yourself. As the knife technique teacher, I'll let Xiao Ming tell you the arrangements. The 1st and 2nd floors of the cooking department's building are used for teaching. The 3rd and 4th floors are dormitories, and the 5th floor is the teacher's office. I think you don't need an office, so you can stay on the 4th floor of the dormitory. There aren't many students in the cooking department, so I can make an exception and let you stay in a dormitory by yourself." Just as Zixio said this, a deep voice suddenly came from outside. Second uncle, I heard that there's a guy who knows the golden void knife technique. Where is he?" The door opened with a bang, and a tall figure burst in from outside. Seeing this person, Nian Bing couldn't help but jump in fright. This person was actually taller than her by a head, and his shoulders were extremely broad. When he came in, not only did he have to lower his head, he also had to turn sideways. The dark blue uniform tightly wrapped around his solid muscles. His skin was dark, and his short red hair was disheveled. His eyes were very bright, and although he couldn't be considered handsome, his resolute and sunny face easily gave people a good impression. His whole body was filled with power, especially those large hands that were like palm leaf fans. The joints were extremely prominent, and, as soon as he appeared, he immediately brought a strong pressure. Nian Bing didn't doubt that his hands had the ability to tear her apart. "Xiao Jian, can't you learn from your sister? If you're always so impetuous, how can you accomplish great things?" Zixio said unhappily. The man called Xiao Jian didn't care about Zixio at all. His gaze fell on Nian Bing, and he excitedly said, "Hello, are you that brat who knows the golden void knife technique? I'm called Zi Qingjian, but you can call me Xiao Jian. Let's go, I'll compare notes with you. Let's see whose cooking skills are better." As he said this, he pulled Nian Bing away. Nian Bing jumped in fright. Her arm lightly flashed, and she dodged Zi Qingjian's grab. This was Zi Qingming's older brother? Heavens! No matter how she looked at it, they didn't look like they were born from the same mother. "Xiao Jian, what are you in such a rush for? He can't run, and there will be plenty of chances in the future. You came at the right time. Take him to the 4th floor and find a room to live in. As for his lessons, let your sister arrange them. He'll also be a guest teacher for the knife skills class. Nian Bing, you're called Nian Bing, right? Go with Zi Qingjian. If there's nothing important, don't come looking for me. Also, in the future, you have to knock on my door first." Zi Qingjian excitedly said, "Uncle, Don't waste time talking. Go pick up your girl. Leave Brother Nian Bing to me. Let's go, Brother Nian Bing. As he said this, he pulled Nian Bing. Thinking of what Zi Qingming had said before, Nian Bing hurriedly dodged Zi Qingjian's large hand. She bitterly smiled. Big Brother Zi Qingjian, I'll go by myself. I haven't learned any martial arts, so I can't handle being pulled by you. Zi Qingjian awkwardly said, Oh, I forgot that you're not in the martial arts department. I'll definitely be more careful in the future. The two walked out of the room, and when Zi Qingjian closed the door, it made a loud bang. Seeing that his office door was on the verge of collapsing, Camel Chef Zi Xiao unhappily said, It looks like I'll have to change to a pure iron one. Xiao Ming disturbed my good business again, and Cha Ji's disciple actually appeared. From the looks of it, you should have learned some of Cha Ji's skills. It looks like the cooking world won't be peaceful in the future. However, it really is time for a new generation. Us old fellows are old after all. Cha Ji, you damn old geezer. You actually died so early. F*CK. F*CK. Zixio no longer had the mood to flirt and sat in his seat in a daze. Under Zi Qingjian's lead, Nian Bing arrived at the 4th floor. As soon as Zi Qingjian reached the 4th floor, he immediately shouted, Teacher Floorhead, Teacher Floorhead. His loud voice shook the entire corridor. Coming. This is Zi Qingjian again, right? Can't you be a little quieter? Sooner or later, this corridor will collapse. A clear and moving voice carried a fragrant wind. When Nian Bing saw the floorhead's appearance, she couldn't help but be dumbstruck. This was because the person in front of her was a woman, and it was the beautiful middle-aged woman from Zi Xiao's room. Qingjian, what's wrong? You brought this young man here to look for a dorm. I heard a bit of what Xiao Meng said to this old man. Young man, welcome to the culinary department. Although she looked down on this woman, Nian Bing still took the initiative to shake her hand. Sorry to trouble you. The department head said that I can have my own room. Zi Qingjian said, Yes, you can have your own room. There are 2 beds in this room. Maybe one day I'll come find you to spar, and I'll be able to sleep in a place. Teacher Daji, please hurry. Daji smiled slightly and said, Then come with me. As she spoke, she pulled out a bunch of keys out of nowhere. She took one out and handed it to Nian Bing. She led them along the corridor, and after passing through more than 20 doors, they stopped at a door. He stopped in front of a room with the words 4273 on the door. There aren't many students in our department, and some of them are from the city, so the dormitory is relatively empty. You can stay here for now. Young man, what's your name? My name is Nian Bing. Thank you, Teacher Daji. Daji's gaze paused on Nian Bing's handsome face for a second. All right, you can go in and rest. In the future, if there's anything you want to do, just look for me. Remember, the 3rd floor is the girls' dorm. It's a forbidden area for men. With a meaningful smile on her face, she turned and left. Opening the door, Nian Bing and Zi Qingjian walked into his newly assigned dorm. The room was very large, about 30 square meters. There were 2 wardrobes, 2 chairs, 2 beds, and a table. The layout was very simple, but it could be considered clean. Zi Qingjian sat down on one of the chairs without hesitation. His heavy weight caused the chair to groan. Brother Nian Bing, when will you let me see your brocade illusionary door? I heard second uncle say before that the 5 great names each have their own characteristics. Brocade illusionary door is an extremely mysterious knife technique. Nian Bing smiled faintly and said, I only know a little bit. Brother Qingjian, from the looks of it, you don't seem to have a good relationship with your uncle. Bad relationship? How could that be? Although my uncle is much older than me and Little Dream, he's like an old child. Aside from his bad behavior, there's nothing else. He was the one who asked us not to be so polite. Being with my uncle is much more relaxing than being with my father. My uncle is like a friend to us, or even a brother. Nian Bing, you've just arrived, so you might not understand the situation here. You should have seen Teacher Daji in my uncle's office before. Don't think that she's only here because of my uncle. Nian Bing smiled slightly and said, I never look down on anyone. Is Teacher Daji your uncle's wife? Zi Qingjian shook his head and said, No, my uncle doesn't have a wife at all. In his life, he's had countless women. Most of the female teachers in the academy, who are somewhat beautiful, have some relationship with him. Teacher Daji specializes in teaching cooked food in the culinary department. She's the #1 cooked food teacher in the culinary department. She came to the academy because she was convinced by my uncle's culinary skills. If you eat the cooked food she makes, you'll definitely be fascinated. She's taught me and little Dream many useful things. If you have the chance in the future, you can also learn from her. Nianbing nodded and said, I heard Senior Zishio say that you learned the heavy eagle hand technique from him. If there's a chance, I'd like to see it for myself. Zi Qingjian laughed mischievously and said, I've never been interested in cooking. Cooking should be a woman's job. Brother, I'm not talking about you. In fact, it's because of my uncle's heavy eagle hand technique that I chose to study culinary arts. You don't know, but the heavy eagle hand technique is the only one among the 7 great forbidden culinary arts that uses martial arts as its foundation. It can be used to cook, but at the same time, it can also be used to kill. Even my father doesn't know how to use it. It's my uncle's unique skill. It's a pity not to learn it. The jade curtain condensation knife technique that my younger sister learned from it is also very helpful to my own martial arts. I usually don't come to the culinary department for lessons. Most of the time, I'm in the martial arts department. Therefore, if you want to find me, you can just go there and talk to little Jian. My brothers all know me. No, I can't take it anymore. Brother, can you show me some of your skills first? I'm very curious about the word brocade illusion. My younger sister said that you were in a restaurant outside, using the word brocade illusion to carve cucumbers. Every piece of cucumber was carved into the word Meng, so I immediately ran over. Don't take offense, I'm just a bit rash. I'm very interested in things related to martial arts. Nian Bing smiled and said, How could I take offense? I just like to interact with straightforward people like Big Brother Qingjian. Looking at your appearance, your martial arts must be very famous in the academy. Zi Qingjian scratched his head and said, It's all right. I'm a heavy sword teacher in the martial arts department. If you're interested in martial arts, you can come find me at any time. However, you're already a bit old. It's a bit late to start practicing martial arts, but strengthening your body shouldn't be a problem. Your body's condition isn't bad. If you train well for a period of time, you should have some achievements. Nian Bing shook her head and said, No need. I'm only interested in culinary arts. Thank you for your good intentions. There aren't any ingredients here, so I can't use the word brocade illusion. Ingredients? Isn't that simple? Right now it's time for afternoon classes. Come, I'll bring you to the culinary department's 5th-year class. There's knife lessons every afternoon. Didn't Uncle want you to be a knife skills teacher? You can use this chance to show some of your skills. Anyone who can enter our academy has some skills. If you don't shock them first, it won't be easy for you to become a teacher in the future. He was a person who acted swiftly and decisively. This time, he didn't pull Nian Bing and stood up to leave. Chapter 49, Lan Ming Academy. Nian Bing repeated these words in her heart. Looks like I'll have to live here for a while. Master, you refused to tell me who the enemy was, but as your disciple, how can I let go of my hatred? As long as I find out the enemy's situation from Camel Chef, I'll definitely avenge you. She forced you to sever the tendons in her hand, so I'll sever the tendons in her 4 limbs. Thinking of this, his body unconsciously emitted a cold aura. He, who had buried his hatred deep in his heart since young, treated his likes and dislikes differently from ordinary people. Everything was based on his own likes and dislikes. In front of outsiders, he was always kind, but his heart was like ice. Ever since his parents had fallen in the Ice God Tower, only 2 people had truly moved his heart. One was Ghost Chef Cha Ji, and the other was the beautiful woman who had gifted him the heavenly flower token. As for the others, they were just fleeting clouds in his eyes. At best, he only admired them. The 2 came to the 2nd floor. Zi Qingjin did not knock on the door and opened the doors one by one. After 6 consecutive rooms, he finally found his target. Nian Bing, it's here. Come, follow me. Saying this, he pushed open the door and led Nian Bing into the classroom. The classroom was very large, and there were more than 50 students inside. Standing behind the podium was a middle-aged man in his 40s. When he saw Zi Qingjian, He couldn't help but frown. Qingjian, what are you doing? Why aren't you teaching in the martial arts department? What are you doing here? Nianbing's gaze fell on the podium. It was very large, and there was a wide chopping board on it. On the table beside it were some vegetables and raw meat. Below the podium, the tables in front of each student were slightly shorter than the podium. The things placed there are all the same. It looked like they had just started class. Zi Qingjian chuckled and said, Teacher Fan, don't be angry. Let me introduce you. Nianbing, this is Fan Jian, Teacher Fan. However, he's not cheap. He's surnamed Fan. Healthy Jian. It would have been better if he didn't explain. His explanation immediately caused the students to burst into laughter. The expression of the cheap teacher changed again and again, and he resisted the urge to flare up. Zi Qingjian didn't seem to sense his displeasure. He continued, Teacher Fan, this is Nianbing, a new teacher of knife skills. I brought her here to introduce you to her. At the same time, let the students get to know each other. Fan Jian looked at Nianbing in surprise. He asked, a new saber technique teacher? He was not the only one who was surprised. Before Nianbing, Zi Qingming had been the youngest teacher in the Orchid Dream Academy. The students of the Orchid Dream Academy were all very proud of themselves. Zi Qingming had been able to suppress them because of her stunning appearance, and also because her knife skills had reached a godly level. Now, there was a new knife skills teacher, and at such a young age, it was not easy for them to accept her. Nianbing nodded to Fan Jian. Hello, Teacher Fan. I've just arrived at the academy. Please take care of me in the future. Zi Qingjian said impatiently. All right, don't be so polite. Nianbing, hurry up and let me see your skills. Let the brats below see them too. Nianbing gave Fan Jian a questioning look. Can I? Teacher Fan? He knew very well that if he wanted to stay in the academy and live comfortably for a while, he had to show some real skills. Fan Jian was infuriated that his class had been interrupted. However, Zi Qingjian held a very high position in the school. Although he was usually kind to others, it was very difficult for him to hold someone in high regard. Therefore, Fan Jian wanted to see what kind of ability this psychic ice dragon had to be able to hold Zi Qingjian in such high regard. Nianbing made a gesture of invitation. Since you are also a knife skills teacher in our department, we will be colleagues in the future. Please. Nianbing did not stand on ceremony. She walked to the seat Fan Jian had vacated and looked at the 50 students below. She smiled faintly. Perhaps you think that I am too young to be a teacher, but I just want to tell you one thing. Age does not determine the level of culinary skills. As the saying goes, those who have achieved success first. If any of you feel that your knife skills are better than mine, I am willing to give up this seat at any time. Although his voice was very calm, the faint arrogance that appeared filled the entire audience. Of course, it was impossible to gain the approval of these students with just a few words. Nianbing's voice had just faded. Someone jeered from below. Don't just talk and do nothing. Let's see what kind of skills you have to come here and boast. Nianbing raised a finger in the direction of the voice. This student, please stand up. Stand up if you want. Do you think I'm scared of you? This was a student who was not very tall, but looked very sturdy. Perhaps it was because he often exercised, but the muscles on his body swelled up the academy uniform. His dark red short hair stood up like a porcupine, and his face was full of disdain. He clearly did not approve of this young teacher Nianbing. Zi Qingjian jokingly scolded, Dun Zi, it's you again. It seemed that he was very familiar with this student. The student called Dun Zi chuckled. Brother Jian, I'm not convinced. Could it be that he has Sister Meng's skill? Zi Qingjian snorted. Just watch. You'll know very soon. Little Meng views Nianbing as her greatest competitor. You stinking brat. You don't attend class properly all day. You only know how to go around causing trouble for your teacher. Wait until my heavy sword class tomorrow. I'll have a good spar with you. Dunzi jumped in fright. He hurriedly waved his hands. Forget it, forget it. I admit that you can insta-kill me. Okay? Brother Jian, you're the person I admire the most in the academy other than the principal. Can you bear to hurt my young body? The classroom was once again filled with roaring laughter. Dunzi, who used the word young to describe himself, put on a bashful expression. Everyone couldn't help but burst out laughing. The only one who didn't laugh was Nian Bing. When the laughter stopped, he picked up the kitchen knife on the table and compared it with his hand. Although this knife was far inferior to his own proud sky, it was still much better than the one in the restaurant. Dunzi, right? Dunzi snorted. He stuck out his firm chest and said, "That's right. How about it? Cut me with a knife. You really might not be able to cut me." Nian Bing faintly smiled. He said, "I'm a cooking teacher. I'm not a martial arts teacher. Since you asked for someone to cut you, I think that Brother Qing Jian will fulfill your wish tomorrow. I told you to stand up because I want to know your name. Well, I know you're not convinced. Maybe most of you are older than me. As long as one of you can repeat the knife skill that I'm about to complete, I'll immediately worship him as my teacher. Otherwise, you'll have to call me teacher in the future. Remember my name. I'm Nian Bing." As he said, he picked up a relatively large carrot with his left hand. All the students, including Dunzi, looked at Nian Bing. They all wanted to see, what ability did this arrogant new teacher have? With a faint smile, Nian Bing's eyes revealed a faint cold light. The 5 fingers of his right hand holding the knife moved slightly. His palm stretched out, and the kitchen knife suddenly spun in his hand. With the constant rhythm of his palm, the spinning speed became faster and faster. Dunzi stood there and snorted. "That's it. I could play with knives when I was 3 years old. How could you want to be our teacher with such little ability?" Nian Bing's despicable knife was still spinning. He looked at Dunzi. His gaze was like 2 cold bolts of lightning that flashed across the classroom. Dunzi felt his entire body turn cold. He couldn't continue speaking. At this moment, Nian Bing moved. He really moved. He spread out his left hand, holding the carrot so that it was flat on his palm. The knife in his right hand moved closer to the carrot, but the edge of the knife touched the carrot. The knife spun so fast that Nian Bing's right hand brought out a shadow because of the speed. There was no sound of cutting vegetables. Everything was still so quiet. The knife kept flashing back and forth on the carrot. Even Ziqing's sword couldn't see clearly what the knife was doing at that moment. Nian Bing's hand was very steady. The knife flashed back and forth, as if he was repeating the same action. He raised his head, no longer looking at the knife and the carrot, but looked at the whole classroom. What's the foundation of knife skill? It's stability. Without a stable hand, even if you can cut something good occasionally, it can't be called a mature knife skill. The key of my knife skill is to pick. If you have the ability, you can see it clearly. If you only talk, you'll always be mediocre. Brother Qing Jian, this is the golden word illusion that you want to see. Hearing the 4 words golden word illusion, Fan Jian's whole body shook, and his eyes showed a light of horror. Nian Bing's hand that was holding the knife began to tremble strangely. The tip of the knife continued to poke at the carrot. The red bits were thin and even, appearing on the chopping board. His left hand that was holding the carrot didn't move at all under the light of the knife. The carrot didn't seem to need to move. Only the light of the knife kept flashing around it. At this moment, the trembling light of the knife was actually spinning faster than before. Apart from a series of afterimages, no one could see anything else. The knife flashed, and the kitchen knife stuck on the chopping board. All the trembling disappeared. Nian Bing's forehead was a little sweaty, and his breath was a little short. He slowly extended his left arm and presented the carrot in front of the students. "Dunzi, tell me, what do you see now?" Dunzi looked at the carrot in confusion. "It's a carrot. The higher-ups told you to hold a knife and make holes in it. Is this your knife skill?" Nian Bing's aura had already suppressed him, and with Ziqing's deterrence, he didn't dare to ridicule her. Indeed, as Dunzi said, the carrot became uneven, but it still looked like a carrot. There was nothing special about it. Ziqing's eyes showed a trace of disappointment. Only Fan Jian's eyes flashed. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't confirm his thoughts. He looked like he wanted to say something, but didn't. If you want to practice knife skills, first of all, you have to train your eyes. You can't even see what I'm doing. You haven't learned enough cooking skills in the past 5 years. Nian Bing reached out his right hand and pinched the top of the carrot. He lifted it up, and his left hand also pinched the top of the carrot. His gaze swept across the audience. At this moment, his body emitted an insufferably domineering aura. It was a domineering aura that came from confidence. He shook his hands slightly and separated them. A strange scene appeared. The originally bumpy carrot naturally dispersed at this moment like a piece of cloth. No, to be precise, it was more like a piece of red silk. It gently unfolded without any damage. The originally conical carrot had unexpectedly turned into a piece of cloth that was 1 square meter in size. And on the surface of the cloth, there were 100 similar lines engraved. There were 2 words, Dunzi. Dunzi rubbed his eyes and opened them as wide as possible. This is impossible. This isn't knife skill. It should be magic. It must be magic. Nian Bing gently placed the red silk, made from the carrot, on the chopping board. Have you heard of magic like this? Nothing in this world is impossible. It just depends on whether you dare to do it, whether you dare to think about it. If you don't try, how do you know you'll fail? In the Northern Ice Moon Empire, there's a technique called paper cutting. After a simple piece of paper is folded, only a few small parts need to be removed. When it's reopened, a strange pattern will appear. This knife skill of mine is derived from paper cutting. It focuses on the word and perfectly reflects the picking of the knife skill. Carrots are a very simple material. This is nothing. This set of knife skill, embroidered brocade, can only reflect its essence on the soft surface. You're all still far from that. Teacher Fan, sorry to disturb you. Please continue with the class. After saying this, Nian Bing pulled the dumbfounded Zi Qingjian out of the classroom. After they left, the entire classroom was still silent. Dunzi rubbed his eyes several times, but the carrot in front of him was still as magical as ever. Fan Jian returned to the podium and swept his gaze over the students. Students, what do you think of what happened just now? Can anyone tell me? A student who was close to Dunzi said, Teacher Fan, I know. That teacher called Nian Bing must have prepared a piece of silk in advance, and then used a knife to draw a few strokes. Before showing it to us, she used the silk to exchange for the carrot. Bullshit. Which eye of yours saw her exchange the silk? Come over here and eat these 100 Dunzi. Let's see if you can eat them to death. Fan Jian was furious. You bunch of trash are usually so arrogant. What? You've seen her real ability today, and now you're slandering her? The carrot is mine, and so is the knife. Teacher Nian Bing didn't know Dunzi at all. That vivid knife lesson just now was to let you know that there's always someone better. Do you know what embroidered brocade is? Who can tell me? The students looked at each other in dismay, but no one could say a word. Fan Jian said coldly, You don't know, right? Many of you were specially sent to the academy by various restaurants on the continent to learn. But with your knowledge, you'll never be able to reach the peak of culinary intent. In the continent's culinary world, there are 5 mystical knife techniques. In my opinion, the mystical aspects of these 5 knife techniques are not inferior to any top-notch martial arts, and may even be superior. Listen up. These 5 Tao techniques are Dance of the Dragon Sepals, Sunset Glow of the Clean Flame, 8 Feather Court, Embroidered Brocade, and Jade Curtain Coagulation. And what teacher Nian Bing used just now was the 4th-ranked Embroidered Brocade knife technique. Although she's young, she's more than qualified to be your teacher. I admit that her knife technique is far from mine. I won't waste any more words. Whether or not you have the ability to learn true knife techniques from teacher Nian Bing will depend on your own abilities. Class dismissed. Nian Bing pulled Zi Qingjian all the way out of the culinary building before letting go. She smiled and said, Are the students of Lan Meng Academy all so difficult to teach? Looks like it's really not easy to be a teacher. Zi Qingjian looked at Nian Bing strangely. Brother, I'm convinced. That move of yours just now was simply too mystical. No wonder embroidered brocade knife technique is always ranked above jade curtain coagulation. Jade curtain coagulation really can't compare to it. Nian Bing smiled and said, Actually, I used a bit of a trick just now. This type of overlapping word technique isn't difficult. Every cut can be used together. If I were to directly pick out the words from the carrot, it would be much more difficult. This is only a matter of controlling the heat. You'll naturally succeed if you connect more. Indeed, although the effect of the overlapping word technique was very good, it wasn't the essence of the embroidered brocade knife technique. Just the number of cuts was much less. At the beginning, when he rotated the kitchen knife, it was to divide the carrot into layers like paper. This way, after picking out some key parts, it was done. It looked very intimidating, but this was only the foundation of the embroidered brocade knife technique. The most important part was the familiarity of the words. "All right, brother, don't be modest. I'm going to find my sister immediately. I feel that her knife technique definitely can't compare to yours. That girl has always had her eyes above her head. I really want to see how she'll react when she finds out about your feat just now." "Haha, brother, you could go ahead and wait for me at the academic affairs office in the main building. I'll bring my sister to find you in a bit and help you get your clothes while I'm at it." Without waiting for Nian Bing's reply, he ran off like the wind. Without the flicker of fighting aura, just the strength of his body alone made his speed terrifying. Nian Bing secretly estimated that this Zi Qingjian's martial technique was at least at the level of a great swordsman. Moving his hands, Nian Bing was full of confidence. His knife technique didn't deteriorate because he didn't use it often. Instead, he was inspired by the enlightenment he gained after leaving the peach blossom forest. Coupled with the increase in his spiritual power, it seemed that he wasn't far from the highest level of the embroidered brocade knife technique. "Sai, when can I practice the dance of the dragon Sepal to the highest level? That's really too difficult." Right now, his dance of the dragon Sepal only had the form but not the spirit. Fortunately, he saw a real dragon that time. If he had the chance, he would have to practice it. Who knows, he might be inspired by it. As he thought about it, he walked toward the large field outside. Coming to a new place, he had to familiarize himself with the environment. He just didn't know how the communication with the outside world was. As soon as the war ended, he would immediately rush to Allen City. After completing Luo Ro's task, he would have complete freedom before participating in the new Magus tournament. As he thought about it, Nian Bing arrived at the large field in front of him. The entire academy gave him a very relaxed feeling, especially this large field. Looking into the distance, his mind became more open. The culinary academy didn't disappoint him. At least he met camel chef Zixio here. After he was fully familiar with the place, he would definitely challenge him. "Young man, are you new here?" An old voice sounded beside Nian Bing. Nian Bing was shocked. He secretly scolded himself for not being vigilant enough. With the strength of his spiritual energy, he actually didn't know that someone was right beside him. Turning his head to look in the direction of the voice, he saw an old man standing there. He had a head of long, bluish-gray hair and was wearing a plain cloth robe. He held a broom in his hand and was slowly sweeping the ground. At first glance, this old man seemed a little familiar, but Nian Bing was sure that he had never seen him before. The old man's tall figure was already thin, but his eyes were very strange. His purple eyes were very clear, and there wasn't the slightest bit of twilight that an old man should have. If it wasn't for the wrinkles on his face and his doddering appearance, Nian Bing really couldn't tell his age. "Hello, I've just arrived at the academy today. I'm a culinary student." Although the old man looked like a cleaner, Nian Bing was still very polite. Jia Ji had once told him not to underestimate anyone, especially people that you couldn't see through. Respecting others was respecting yourself. Of course, if the person you respected wasn't worthy of respect, then it was a different story. The old man nodded and said, "I was wondering why I hadn't seen you before. It seems that you have a lot of things on your mind." Nian Bing was shocked. He had always hidden his true self very deeply. Could it be that he had accidentally revealed something? He said with some vigilance, "It's my honor to be able to come to Lan Meng Academy to study. The learning atmosphere here gives me a lot of pressure. I'm thinking about how to study better. I made a fool of myself in front of you." The old man glanced at Nian Bing with deep meaning and said, "Quickly go and get your uniform. After putting on a uniform, you'll truly become a part of Lan Meng." Nian Bing nodded and said, "Thank you. Then I'll leave first." After saying that, he turned and walked towards the main building beside the field. As he walked, he could faintly hear the old man talking to himself behind him. The feeling of sweeping is really good, especially the rustling sound when the broom touches the ground. This is the sound of nature. The most basic work can bring me the most joy. His heart moved, But Nian Bing didn't stop walking. However, he was still pondering over the old man's words. What did he mean? Basic, that's right. How could I forget the basics? When I was learning culinary art from my master, I had learned the basics for as long as 5 years. My master had even said that the time was a little short. With the best foundation, it would be much easier to learn other culinary arts. It was the same for magic. Magic power was the foundation. If I pursued magic arrays and magic scrolls too much, I might only be able to become strong for a while, but I would never be able to reach the peak of magic. Kitty's father had also reminded me of this point, but I ignored it. These days, although Nian Bing still maintained the habit of meditating every day, most of his thoughts were placed on magic arrays and his understanding of the same origin of ice and fire. No matter how good a technique was, it still needed a foundation. I understand. Whether it was culinary arts or magic, what I needed to do now was still the basic practice. Thinking of this, Nian Bing's heart suddenly became clear. He suddenly stopped and wanted to go back and thank the old man. However, when he turned around, the old man was already gone. Mysterious dragon's head and tail. This was Nian Bing's evaluation of him. When he came to the main building, he was just about to enter when he was stopped by 2 students standing at the entrance. They were not like the guards at the academy's gate who were wearing soldiers' clothes. The 2 of them looked at his clothes, and one of them said, "Who are you? What are you doing in our academy?" Nian Bing smiled and said, "Hello, I'm a new student. I'm here to collect my uniform." The student said, doubtfully, "Is there a teacher to lead you to collect your uniform? Why are you alone?" "I'm sorry, you can't go in. Whichever department you're from, have a teacher lead you to collect your uniform. Otherwise, we can't let you in." Nian Bing frowned. At this moment, a cold and clear voice sounded from behind him. "He's from our department. I'll bring him in." When he turned around, he saw the Zi Qingjian siblings walking over. When the 2 students saw the siblings, they hurriedly bowed and moved to the side. Zi Qingming looked at Nian Bing strangely and said, "I'm sorry. This is the academy's rule. Big brother's really too much. How could he forget about this? Come in with us." Zi Qingjian was a bit embarrassed. Nian Bing smiled and said, "It's okay. I was going to wait for you anyway." The 3 of them entered the school building together. As they walked up the stairs, Nian Bing looked around. He discovered that there was a sign in front of every classroom in the school building. On it was written the names of the classes of the martial arts department. Zi Qingjian explained to Nian Bing, "Because our martial arts department is the largest department in the academy, the main school building is used by us. Only the 8th floor belongs to the magic department. They have the least number of people, only 100 or so students." Magic department? Nian Bing's heart skipped a beat. If the magic department existed, then this Lanming Academy should have a library. If he had the chance, he would go take a look. "Big brother Zi Qingjian, is there a library in the academy?" Zi Qingjian laughed and said, "Of course there is. Moreover, it's divided into departments. Your cooking department's library is in your school building. Our martial arts department's library is the smallest because the teachers all say that if students learn too many miscellaneous things, it won't be good for their development. On the other hand, the magic department, which is the smallest, has a special library in the academy. It's very large. However, only the students of the magic department can enter." Looking at the honest and somewhat cute Zi Qingjian, Nian Bing's favorable impression of him increased. He was now hesitating in his heart. Should he continue to hide the fact that he knew magic? Was there a need? If he wanted to know who his master's enemy was, then he had to defeat camel chef Zi Xiao. If he didn't display his most proficient magic cooking skills, then it would be very difficult to do so. Since that was the case, there was no point in continuing to hide it. In any case, he wouldn't be staying here for too long. Under the Zi Qingjian siblings' guidance, he successfully received his school uniform and teacher's insignia. After leaving the administration office, aside from helping Nian Bing out of the situation, Zi Qingming, who hadn't said a word until now, finally opened her mouth. "Nian Bing, I want to compare knife skills with you." Nian Bing smiled indifferently and said, "I also want to compare Miss Qingming's jade curtain condensation knife skills, but I'll pass for today." I've just arrived here, and I'm a bit tired. Once I familiarize myself with the environment, there will be plenty of opportunities in the future. Zi Qingming obviously didn't expect Nian Bing to refuse the challenge. Her eyebrows wrinkled as she said, "You're a grown man. Are you that weak?" Nian Bing indifferently said, "I'm not like you. I've never practiced any martial arts, so why can't my body be a bit weaker?" Zi Qingming's purple eyes lit up as she coldly said, "Are you still holding a grudge over what happened in the restaurant?" Nian Bing shook his head and said, "I'm not such a petty person. Miss Qingming, I wonder if I can be like you and take another course?" Zi Qingming was stunned for a moment and said, "You want to take an elective?" Obviously, she was very surprised, but she quickly returned to normal. "Then what do you want to take? As long as you have the ability to pass the test, you can take any course in the academy, but you can only take one course." Nian Bing smiled and turned to Zi Qingjian. "Big brother Zi Qingjian, can I trouble you to recommend me to the magic department to take the test? I want to take the magic department as an elective." Zi Qingjian said in shock, "Brother, are you sure you haven't made a mistake? Magic is extremely difficult to learn. In my opinion, if you want to have an extra skill to protect yourself, why don't you learn some martial arts from me? With my face, you won't even need to take the test. The teachers in the magic department are quite old-fashioned. You must pass the test before you can enter the magic department." Zi Qingming said, "Big brother is right. Although magic looks more beautiful, it's far worse than martial arts. I think it would be better for you to choose martial arts. Otherwise, unless you spend a lot of time practicing magic, you might be able to achieve some results. But if you do that, your cooking skills will be wasted." Nian Bing stretched out his right hand. "You don't need to persuade me. In fact, although my main profession is a chef, I'm also a magician. Look." A light flashed in his hand, and under the control of his spiritual force, the icicle staff silently appeared in his palm. Under the urging of magic, the surrounding air suddenly became cold. How is this possible? Zi Qingming looked at the staff in Nian Bing's hand, unable to believe this fact. Nian Bing smiled indifferently and said, "I just said in the cooking department class that there is nothing impossible in this world. It all depends on whether you want to do it or not, and whether you dare to try it. All right, the magic department is on the 8th floor, right? Miss Qingming, I don't dare trouble you. Big brother Zi Qingjian, please take me there." Chapter 50. Zi Qingjian wasn't as surprised as his sister. He was a straightforward person, although Nian Bing's knowledge of magic was also surprising to him. He didn't suspect anything when he remembered that he and his sister both cultivated martial arts and culinary arts. He took the lead and walked towards the stairs. Nian Bing was just about to follow Zi Qingjian when Zi Qingming said, "I'll go with you. I want to see what level your magic is at." Martial arts and culinary arts have some similarities, especially Big Brother's heavy eagle hand and my knife skills. But magic and culinary arts don't seem to have any connection. I don't believe you're a genius who can multitask. From the first time she saw Zi Qingming, Nian Bing had fully experienced her arrogance. Looking at her cold and arrogant face, Nian Bing couldn't help but feel a bit annoyed. From the bottom of his heart, he preferred Feng Nu and Long Ling's personalities. Long Ling was gentle like water, and Feng Nu was soft with a hint of firmness. They were both easier to accept. However, Zi Qingming was somewhat similar to Luo Ro. Because she had some abilities in certain areas, she had developed an arrogant attitude. For such a woman, Nian Bing was too lazy to pay attention to her. He didn't talk to Zi Qingming anymore and chased after Zi Qingjian. The magic department was a unique department in the entire Lanming Academy. The students' dormitories, the teaching location, and the Heart Magic Laboratory were all on the 8th floor of the main teaching building. As soon as they set foot on the 8th floor, they could feel all kinds of strong magic elements filling the corridor. If one looked carefully, they would discover that the reason for the strong magic elements was mainly due to the relief carvings on the walls. They were very simple magic array patterns. However, in the center of the magic array, there were different complex symbols that represented different elements of magic. Surrounded by these symbols, a magic gem appeared in the center of the array. Although it wasn't a top-quality gem, under the effect of the magic array, The gem's energy could be amplified to display the effect of condensing magic elements. Such a strong magic atmosphere. It was comparable to the Ice Moon Empire's Magicians Guild. Nian Bing sighed in his heart. Even in the Ice Moon Empire's Magicians Guild, there weren't such relief carvings. It wasn't because of the difficulty of making the embossments, but because the guild simply didn't have the financial resources to purchase a large number of magic gemstones. Just like what Long Ling said, money was the biggest obstacle to the development of the Guild of Magic. Every time I come to this place, I feel a bit oppressed, but those mages seem to enjoy it a lot. Zi Qingjian said with some dissatisfaction. Repressed? Realization dawned on Yinbing. She guessed that it was because the density of mana here was too high. People who weren't magicians would naturally feel oppressed under the pressure of the various magic elements. If they could practice magic here, it would indeed be very beneficial for magicians. Boom! Suddenly, a loud sound came from the magic department's third classroom, scaring Yinbing. Although the sound was very loud, it didn't cause any tremors. Idiot! How did you train your magic control? He couldn't even control bursting flames. Do you want to blow up everyone here? An angry roar sounded. The loud and clear voice was completely comparable to Zi Qingjian's. Zi Qingjian stopped in his tracks and whispered to Yinbing, I don't know which student is unlucky again. This voice belongs to the head of the magic department. He's known as the most powerful archmage in history. Whether or not you can enter the magic department depends on whether or not you can pass his test. The most powerful archmage in history? Isn't he a magister? No matter how strong an archmage is, they can't compare to a magister. Nianbing looked at Zi Qingjian in confusion. Zi Qingjian shrugged his broad shoulders. I don't know either. You'll have to ask him yourself. I don't understand magic. In any case, his title is recognized by the entire continent. He didn't call himself that. Who's making a ruckus outside and disturbing my class? Amidst the angry roar, a fist-sized fireball flew out of the window, drawing a beautiful arc as it accurately landed on Zi Qingjian's head. The fireball's sudden arrival gave Zi Qingjian a fright. He was just about to urge his douqi to block it when a ball of blue light blocked his path. Nianbing waved her right hand forward. The icicle staff in her hand carried a dense ice element as it touched the fist-sized fireball. Her entire body trembled slightly, and the fireball disappeared with a slight tremor. Nianbing was also shaken back a step. He had always boasted that his control over magic was far superior to his peers, but that fireball just now had several special characteristics that normal fireballs didn't have. It seemed to change according to the person's will. A first-level spell, when it came into contact with his icicle staff, actually produced a sticky and explosive effect. When it stuck to his staff, it suddenly exploded. Although its power was still a first-level spell, the instant it exploded, it split into 3 stages. The force of the explosion should have spread out in all directions, but it actually concentrated in one direction, causing the ice spell that he was so confident in to take a step back. It was also a first-level spell, but he was already at a disadvantage. If this had been a high-level spell, he was afraid that he would have had a hard time blocking it. Nianbing immediately put away his arrogance after he figured out the reason why he had been pushed back. Zi Qingjian said loudly, Director He, it's me. Why did you attack without distinguishing between right and wrong? As he spoke, he pushed open the classroom door and looked inside unhappily. Zi Qingjian's figure was really too tall. Standing behind him, Nianbing couldn't see anything. She only heard the voice from the classroom from before say, It's Little Purple. Who told you to sneak around and disturb my class? Can't you find me when I don't have class? You wait outside first. Wait until I'm done with class. Zi Qingjian said, Sorry to disturb you. I'll wait outside for you. Finished speaking, he quickly left. As he left the classroom, Nianbing could faintly see that this was a very large classroom. There were at least 100 people sitting inside. It seemed that all the students of the magic department were inside. From Zi Qingjian's attitude toward Director He, it could be seen that this director of the magic department had a very high position in the academy. Closing the classroom door, Zi Qingjian turned around and smiled at Nian Bing, saying, "Brother, so you really are a magician? Now we can only wait a bit." Director Hay's temper isn't too good. Nian Bing smiled faintly. "It's fine. It doesn't matter. We'll just wait for a while." Zi Qingming looked at Nian Bing strangely. "What rank are you as a magician?" Nian Bing said indifferently, "I don't know either. However, passing the magic department's exam shouldn't be a problem." "Brother Qingjian, I heard that the Huarong Empire and the Qilu Empire have joined forces to start a war against Holland. Do you know about this?" Zi Qingjian nodded, saying, "I just heard about it yesterday. This time, the situation is very bad. Right now, we can only hope that the reinforcements from the Ice Moon Empire will be of use. I really want to go to the battlefield and take a look. However, the dean doesn't allow non-graduates to participate in the war. I'm also a teacher, so I can't leave. Warriors should be thrown into battle in order to show their true worth. After teaching this batch of students, I will definitely join the Empire's strongest Silver Feather Knight regiment and display my skills." At this point, his eyes revealed a look of desire. He was definitely a warmonger. Nian Bing didn't ask any more questions. He wasn't interested in the war at all. The three of them waited silently at the door of the classroom. After a full hour, the magic bell rang, signaling the end of class. The door opened, and the magic students filed out. Their clothes were different from the students of the other departments. They all wore the magic robes of a beginner magician, but the color was dark blue. Only their chests were embedded with magic gems of different elements. These gems showed the element of their magic. The students' expressions were very cold. Not a single one of them greeted the Zi Qingjian siblings. They all headed in the other direction of the 8th floor. Walking at the very back was an old magician. He had a head full of white hair and a wrinkled face. He looked to be at least 70 or 80 years old. He was thin and small, and his dim yellow eyes looked at Nian Bing and the others at the door. "Come in." The contrast between his loud and clear voice and his figure gave people a strange feeling. On the chest area of his red magic robe, there was a golden flame symbol. A fire element magician? "Director Hay, I brought you a new student. He just joined the cooking department and wants to take the magic department as an elective. Is that okay?" Zi Qingjian said politely. "Elective magic? A chef also wants to learn magic?" Director Hay's dim yellow eyes suddenly flashed with a cold light as he stared at Nian Bing. Nian Bing didn't back down and looked him in the eye. Although he felt like he was being seen through, he forced himself to not look away. Director Hay's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. "Then let's try. Kid, were you the one who blocked my fireball technique?" Nian Bing nodded and said, "Hello, Director Hay." Director Hay's gaze swept over the Zi Qingjian siblings and said, "You two can leave. He can stay by himself." Zi Qingjian smiled and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you. Little sister, let's go." Zi Qingming blinked her large purple eyes. What surprised everyone was that the cold arrogance on her face actually disappeared. Her warm smile seemed to be able to warm all coldness. She walked to Director Hay's side and took the initiative to hold his skinny arm. "Uncle Hay, I want to see your test on him. Is it okay? Please let me and my brother stay." Director Hay's face revealed a trace of a smile. "You little girl are really clingy. You don't study magic, so what's the use of seeing it?" Although he didn't agree, his tone had already softened a lot. "No, I just want to see. Uncle Hay, at worst I'll make you a delicious meal to compensate you. Don't you like to drink? Tonight, I'll make some dishes to go with the wine for you." "Okay, if you want to see, then go ahead." Director Hay somewhat helplessly looked at the beauty who was half a head taller than him. Nian Bing said, "Director Hay, then how do you want to test me?" Director Hay glanced at the icicle staff in Nian Bing's hand and said, "You're an ice magician. That's good. As long as you can use a second-rank magic to break my first-rank fire spell, then you pass." As he said that, he raised his withered left hand, and a dark red flame rose up. It was indeed just an ordinary fire spell. Nian Bing didn't think that this test was easy. The higher the level of a spell, the greater the difference between a high-tier spell and a low-tier spell. Although there was a difference between a Tier 2 spell and a Tier 1 spell, it couldn't compare to a high-tier spell. He had already tested the magic shooter's control over his spells. It definitely wasn't as easy as it seemed to be to use a Tier 2 ice spell to break through his Tier 1 fire spell. Without saying anything, Nian Bing raised the icicle staff in her hand and observed her surroundings. She had already thought of a good method. The faint blue light gradually became brighter, and under the influence of a deep and rhythmic incantation, second-rank ice bullets continuously formed in front of Nian Bing. She didn't rush to attack, but continued to condense ice bullets. Kid, if you use Ice Bullet Rain, then it will be a third-rank spell. Director He reminded Nian Bing said. Nian Bing smiled faintly. As long as I don't attack together, it won't be considered Ice Bullet Rain. At this time, dozens of ice bullets had already appeared in front of her. She pointed the icicle staff in her hand forward, and with a flash of light, an ice bullet suddenly flew towards the fire in Director He's hand. Director He calmly looked at Nian Bing, and the fire in his hand suddenly shrank to a third of its original volume. Just as the ice bullet was about to hit, the fire from small to large, and with a puff, it expanded. However, the ice bullet didn't bounce off as expected. The ice bullet suddenly stopped a foot away from the fire, and when the fire expanded, the ice bullet suddenly exploded, turning into a mist of ice that enveloped the fire. Under the effect of the mist, the fire suddenly dimmed, and just as it was about to be extinguished, it suddenly contracted and released, forcibly pushing the mist away. Elastic fire. Your control of magic is truly admirable. Nian Bing's eyes were filled with respect, and the second ice bullet flew out. Director He's eyes were also filled with surprise. Nian Bing's control of the ice bullet spell had already exceeded his expectations. At this time, the second ice bullet had already arrived. Director He shrank the fire in his hand to the smallest extent and didn't release it, using the same principle to deal with all changes. At this time, Nian Bing displayed his precise control of magic. The ice bullet flying in the air paused 7 times, and then accelerated 7 times, constantly changing the direction and speed of its flight. Although it was only one ice bullet, it gave off a feeling of infinite change. The distance was getting closer and closer, and when the ice bullet suddenly accelerated and rushed to a meter in front of Director He, it suddenly underwent a huge change. The entire ice bullet was instantly compressed into an ice needle and shot towards Director He's forehead at 3 times the speed of before, completely ignoring the fire in his hand. With a distance of 1 meter, there was very little room for Director He to dodge the ice needle. The strength of the magician's magic could only be seen in a crisis. A layer of pale yellow light enveloped Director He's face, turning his skin into an earthy yellow. However, this strange magic that suddenly appeared was not attacked by the ice needle. The moment the ice needle was about to hit Director He, it suddenly exploded, turning into a mist of ice that blocked his vision. Director He thought to himself that this was bad, but before he could react, his left hand shook, and the fireball had already disappeared in the perception of his spiritual power. The mist of ice dissipated, and Director He looked at Nian Bing with shining eyes. What a good diversion tactic. You've passed the test. Nian Bing was currently staring blankly at Director He, his eyes filled with shock. Director He gave him a look, and he gradually returned to normal. He hurriedly bowed and said, "A second level against a first-level magician. This student won by luck." The change had happened very quickly. The siblings only saw Nian Bing shoot out 3 ice bullets, and the fireball in Director He's hand was extinguished. Naturally, they who did not understand magic could not see the mystery behind it. Nian Bing nodded and said, "Young man, what's your name?" Nian Bing said, "I'm Nian Bing." Director He said, "From today onwards, you're a student of the magic department. I'm the head of the magic department, He Yi, a fire sorcerer. Since you're an elective, you should come to my classes often. Qing Jian, Qing Ming, you two can leave first. I have something to say to this new student alone." Qing Ming was stunned. Just as she was about to say something, she felt the chill from He Ye's body. She knew there was no room for discussion this time. She could only let go of He Ye's hand and walk towards the door. When she passed by Nian Bing, she whispered to him, "Coward, I'll always be waiting for your challenge, whether it's cooking or martial arts. After saying this, she recalled her steps. She pulled her brother away. With a bang, the classroom door closed. Only Nian Bing and He Yi were left in the large magic classroom. They did not speak, only looked at each other. After a long while, He Yi spoke first. You've already seen through it? I really didn't expect that a simple test would actually allow someone to figure out my background. Your ability to control magic has exceeded my expectations. Nian Bing smiled. Director He, your magic also gave me a great shock. No wonder Brother Qingjian said to the most powerful sorcerer. What's more, your dual-element magic is so harmonious. Yes, the reason why he was stunned before was because he discovered He Yi's secret. When He Yi was preparing to block the ice needles, he used ice magic, not fire magic. And the second rank earth magic, 3-stone skin, could instantly make his skin as hard as stone. How could he be surprised that both fire and earth magic appeared on the same person at the same time? He Yi smiled indifferently. The most powerful sorcerer, haha, the most powerful sorcerer, I can only be a sorcerer. Do you think dual-element magic is a happy thing? Nian Bing smiled bitterly. Of course not, otherwise I wouldn't be bothered. As he said this, he raised his hands at the same time. An ice ball and a fireball appeared in his palms. This time, it was He Yi's turn to be shocked. You? Impossible? Ice, fire. Don't tell me you're. Nian Bing sighed softly and said, That's right, I'm also a dual-element mage. However, I'm not as lucky as you are. Fire and earth don't repel each other. Furthermore, one is the most powerful defensive magic, while the other is the most powerful offensive magic. When the two are used together, you can unleash your full potential. But my two magics have to be vigilant against each other at all times. He Yi was the first dual-element magician he met. The reason why he didn't hide his biggest secret was because he wanted to learn some secrets of dual-element magic from He Yi. He Yi's eyes flashed. After a long time, he said in a deep voice, Which bastard is your teacher? Didn't he see that your body had two kinds of repents when you just started practicing magic? Dual cultivation of ice and fire is no longer a matter of increasing your strength, but it can ruin your life at any time. Nian Bing said, Director He, this has nothing to do with my teacher. When I first started cultivating magic, I learned it from my father. I had always been learning fire magic there, but something happened to my father, so there was no one to guide me. I had no choice but to fumble around on my own for 8 years. During those 8 years, I accidentally learned ice magic. Although I realized that something was wrong with it, there was nothing I could do about it. My teacher also said that these two magics are very dangerous, but they can't threaten my life for the time being. You're also a dual-element magician. Don't you have a way to resolve the contradiction between ice and fire magic? Resolve? Resolve my ass. He Yi said in a bad mood. Some superficial magicians think that dual-element magic is very powerful, but they're wrong. Dual-element magic restricts development. I've been immersed in magic for more than 60 years. With my talent, I should have reached the realm of Magus long ago. But because of my dual-element magic, I've always been stuck at the peak of the sorcerer realm. Do you know why? It's because there are some restrictions between earth and fire. It's this little restriction that affects my ability to reach the peak of the magic world. Although I can reach the level of an ordinary magus under the effects of dual-element magic, I'll never be able to use magic above the 10th level. As long as a magus can release a forbidden spell of the 11th level, I won't be able to resist it. This is the sorrow of dual-element magic. At this point, his complex was already very agitated. Nian Bing looked at He Yi in disappointment. Then, my ice and fire are of the same origin. It's even more impossible to resolve the restriction. They're mutually exclusive. If I continue to practice, the stronger my magic is, the more dangerous it will be. He Yi lowered his head and muttered to himself for a while before saying, Nian Bing, tell me honestly, what level has your magic reached? Nian Bing replied truthfully, My magic has reached the level of a great magus. My magic control might be a bit stronger than a great magus. He Yi's eyes were filled with shock. A great magus? I wonder how you survived, so to speak. You must have some special method of controlling ice and fire magic. How did you do it? Nian Bing did not hide anything and told Lin Li about his cultivation process. He could tell that the dark mage in front of him was a mage who was even more stubborn than his teacher, Long Ji. Nian Bing's understanding of magic would definitely be helpful to him. As a dual elemental mage, Nian Bing would definitely understand Nian Bing's difficulties better than Long Ji. Even if he could only provide her with a trace of a clue, she might be able to complete the fusion of ice and fire. He Ye's eyes flashed as he listened to the recount. Rotation, it's actually rotation. Relying on the centrifugal force of rotation, the two extremes of magic can be intertwined but not infringe on each other. Adding on the adaptability of your own two types of magic to ice and fire, you've gained the ability to fuse ice and fire. Just as you imagined, once the rotation stops, your body definitely won't be able to withstand the two stabs, and you'll definitely die. Who would have thought that brat Zi Qingjian would actually give me such a treasure? You don't have to learn any cooking skills. From today onwards, no, from now onwards, we'll study the mysteries of dual-element magic together. As long as I can find a way to help you solve the fusion of ice and fire, I'll definitely be able to reach the level of an archmage. Listening to your cultivation method today has given me a lot of inspiration. It was the first time they met, but He acted as if he was seeing an old friend. He directly pulled Nian Bing towards his own Magus laboratory. 3 months passed. Zi Qingming would often feel irritable during this time, especially when she thought of that handsome face. Originally, she had been waiting for Nian Bing to challenge her. She didn't believe that her jade curtain of condensation couldn't compare to Nian Bing's brocade void. Although seeing the red silk that Nian Bing had left behind in the culinary department was a big blow to her, she still felt that she had a chance of winning. However, this wait lasted for 3 months. Let alone a challenge, she didn't even see Nian Bing's shadow. In these 3 months, Nian Bing hadn't left the 8th floor of the main teaching building, not to mention fulfilling his duties as a sour taste teacher. As for the dark sorcerer, he hadn't come out of class since that day. All the classes were handed over to his humble teachers. According to the teachers of the magic department, the dark sorcerer was taking Nian Bing to do some magic research. How could a low-level magus like him be so important to the dark sorcerer? If one were to ask who was the most arrogant in the academy, there was only to ask, it was definitely the dark sorcerer. She really couldn't understand what kind of magical power this Nian Bing had. Thinking of this, Zi Qingming's heart grew a trace of inexplicable anger. She slammed the counter in front of her, scaring the people around her. You guys look after the store, I'm going back to the academy. Leaving behind these words, she walked towards the backyard in annoyance. All along, Teacher He Yi had been a proud daughter of the Lanmeng Academy. Relying on her extraordinary talent, she had obtained great recognition from her teachers in both martial arts and culinary arts. She had even become a teacher of the culinary department. However, the appearance of Nian Bing had shaken her confidence. She knew that before she defeated Nian Bing, she wouldn't be happy. Hello, may I ask how to get to Lanmeng Academy? A soft and pleasant female voice sounded in Zi Qingming's ear. Zi Qingming subconsciously looked up, and suddenly her tender body shook. What she saw was a stunning beauty wearing a blue shirt and pants. Her blue eyes were like the blue sky, her long pink hair like a waterfall, and her slender and well-proportioned body left a deep impression. Everything was so perfect. It was simply a perfect masterpiece of the heavens. Zi Qingming, who had always been proud of her appearance, actually felt a sense of inferiority when she saw her. Miss, I know how to get to Lanmeng Academy. How about I give you a free ride? An obscene voice sounded from the side. It was Li San-er, the one who had received a silver coin from Nian Bing. His eyes were completely attracted by the blue-clothed beauty in front of him. His Adam's apple moved as if he was swallowing and spitting. The blue-clothed girl glanced at the seemingly sluggish Zi Qingming and said to Li San-er, "Then I'll have to trouble you. Please lead the way." Li San-er excitedly rubbed his hands. Just as he was about to leave with the blue-clothed beauty, Zi Qingming's cold voice suddenly sounded. Li San-er, you don't want to stay in Lanmeng City anymore. Miss, I'll take you there. Only now did Li San discover Zi Qingming's existence. He wanted to argue, but when he met Zi Qingming's cold eyes, he immediately lost his temper. He greedily glanced at the blue-clothed girl's beauty and then left dejectedly. Zi Qingming came to the blue-clothed beauty's side. She glanced at the red-sheathed sword in her hand and said, "Miss, you're going to Lanming Academy to learn martial arts, right? I'm also a student of the martial arts department." The blue-clothed beauty was stunned for a moment. She smiled and said, "You can say that. Then I'll have to trouble you to lead the way." Zi Qingming nodded and didn't say anything else. She led the way to Lanming Academy. The blue-clothed beauty's allure was too great. Wherever she went, 100% of people would turn their heads. Zi Qingming walking beside her could only serve as a foil. The blue-clothed beauty always had a faint smile on her face. Everyone who looked at her could clearly feel a pure and holy aura. They couldn't even think of profaning her. Zi Qingming's heart was extremely unbalanced. In Lanming Academy, she was considered one of the top beauties. When had she ever encountered such a situation? Now she felt as if she had become the blue-clothed beauty's maid. She secretly thought that no matter what, she couldn't let this girl enter Lanming Academy and surpass her. Now she could only hope that her martial arts weren't too high and that she wouldn't be able to pass the test. The two girls walked into Lanming Academy. When they reached the center of the huge field, the blue-clothed beauty suddenly stopped. Zi Qingming looked at her and said, "Why aren't you walking? If you want to enter our martial arts department, you need to pass the test." The blue-clothed beauty shook her head and said, "I'm not Lai Pian. I heard that Lanming Academy's martial arts department is one of the best schools on the continent. I want to challenge your academy's teachers." Challenge? Zi Qingming confirmed that she didn't hear wrongly. She frowned and said, "You want to challenge our academy's teachers?" The blue-clothed beauty nodded. She inserted the long sword in her hand into the ground. She raised her head and let her pink hair fall behind her. A light breeze blew, bringing with it a faint fragrance. She took out a blue ribbon from her bosom and tied her hair. She looked even more heroic. "I'll have to trouble you. Can you please call your academy's teachers out?" Chapter 51. Zi Qingming's face darkened. Over the years, there had been no lack of people who boasted of their excellence who came to challenge her. But in the end, they could only return empty-handed. This beauty, who completely suppressed her in terms of appearance, was actually here to challenge her. "If you want to challenge a teacher of the Martial Arts Academy, then you will have to go through me first." With a wave of her hand, she took out a short blade that was only a foot long. Her figure suddenly floated back and looked at the blue-haired beauty in front of her from 30 feet away. The short blade was unsheathed, bringing out a misty blue light. Under the pressure of the Do Chi, it emitted a dazzling blade chi. The blue-haired beauty smiled slightly and said, "Do you want to accept my challenge? Although your Do Chi isn't weak, you are still not my opponent. Call your teacher. You brought me here, so I owe you a favor. I don't want to fight with you." Zi Qingming coldly said, "You don't owe me anything. Since you are here to challenge me, then you will have to go through me first." She lightly waved the short blade in her hand. The misty blue blade brought out a hazy luster. The blade emitted a cold air in all directions. Her body was already covered by a layer of blue Do Chi, showing the strength of a swordmaster. The confrontation between the two beauties immediately attracted the attention of the surrounding students. In a moment, hundreds of students from the Lanming Academy surrounded them. Looking at the two beauties, some of the smarter students had already gone to the school building to report to the teachers of the Martial Arts Academy. The blue-haired beauty pulled out the sword from the ground. She lightly smiled and said, "Since it is like this, then you can make your move. If you lose, then your teacher will naturally come out." Zi Qingming coldly snorted. Her feet slid forward 1 foot. The short blade in her hand seemed to come alive, gently waving in her hand. It was like a ball of blue light, tightly locking onto her opponent. Her feet crisscrossed in small steps without any pattern. Her graceful figure was like a dance, approaching the blue-haired beauty from all directions. The blue-haired beauty stood there with a smile on her face. She didn't even unsheath her long sword, waiting in silence. All the cyan figures suddenly converged, and the dense cyan light burst out in an instant. The cyan light ball transformed into countless saber shadows that enveloped her body. The blue-haired beauty didn't move her feet. With a slight shake of her wrist, a dark red light brought with it a burning hot current as she lifted the sheathed longsword. Her battle chi didn't come out of her body like Zi Qingming did. Instead, it was completely condensed on the sheath without any fancy movements. The scabbard thrust forward in a thrusting posture, straight towards the center of Zi Qingming's saber shadow. Condense! Zi Qingming shouted. A strange scene appeared. The originally chaotic cyan saber shadows suddenly converged in the middle and disappeared. Dozens of sabers converged into one. With a soft clink, the short blade accurately cut the front of the scabbard. At this moment, the green light completely disappeared. One could see that the short blade in Zi Qingming's hand was completely made of green metal. The hilt of the saber was about 5 inches long, and the body of the saber was 8 inches long. The tip of the saber was slightly tilted, and under the sunlight, it flashed with a faint cold light. The pause only lasted for a moment before Zi Qingming let out a muffled groan and was forced back 5 steps before she could stabilize herself. At this time, the blue-haired beauty returned to her original posture, as if she hadn't moved at all. Good saber skills. You reasonably used the speed of the saber to make up for the lack of battle chi in your body. Unfortunately, you have a good set of saber skills, but your battle chi has just entered the realm of a swordmaster. You can't display the full power of your saber skills. I already said that you're not my opponent. Call your master out. Zi Qingming's complexion was like the short blade in her hand. The blood in her body was churning, and a burning hot aura was constantly emitting from her saber. She didn't dare to open her mouth, for fear of losing her battle chi and being attacked by her opponent's fire attribute battle chi. What are you doing surrounded by so many people? Hey, little Meng, what happened to you? As soon as Zi Qingjian's tall figure appeared, the students immediately opened up a path for him. He strode to Zi Qingming's side. When he saw the blue-haired beauty, Zi Qingjian was stunned. He clearly felt that his heart was beating faster and faster. He was 27 years old this year, and for the first time in 27 years, his heart was beating faster because of a woman. He couldn't believe that the woman in front of him was even more beautiful than his sister. Standing there, her body naturally exuded an aura like a mountain. That kind of unshakable feeling left a very deep impression on him. The smile on her face was so gentle, and her blue eyes were so clear. Brother. Zi Qingming's voice was a bit hoarse. Her call made Zi Qingjian come back to his senses. He realized that something was wrong with his sister. He put his hand on her shoulder and transferred his battle chi into her body. Zi Qingming's complexion improved a bit, and the short blade in her hand also regained its luster. Little sister, what happened? Zi Qingjian asked curiously. Zi Qingming's eyes revealed a trace of hatred. Brother, she came to challenge you. You must defeat her. Zi Qingjian looked at the blue-haired beauty in astonishment. You came to challenge me? Did you injure my sister? The blue-haired beauty smiled faintly. No, I didn't injure her. I only suppressed the battle chi in her body. If your strength is about the same as hers, then please call your teacher. Hearing the blue-haired beauty's moving voice, Zi Qingjian only felt his face heat up. I'm a teacher of the academy. His voice was not as loud as usual. The blue-haired beauty's eyes lit up. She raised the long sword in her hand and said, Then please make your move. Weapon or barehanded, it's up to you. Zi Qingjian coughed and stabilized his mind. Weapons have no eyes. Let's do it barehanded. My hands are heavy, so you must be careful. The blue-haired beauty smiled faintly. Is that so? Then I'd like to see it for myself. With a flick of her wrist, the sheathed sword was inserted into the ground without making any sound. Nearly half of it was buried in the ground. She took a step forward and her expression changed. The gentle smile disappeared and was replaced with a calm expression. She stood with her feet in a T-shape and her palms like knives, one in front and one behind her to protect her chest. Zi Qingjian had been a martial arts fanatic since childhood. Feeling his opponent's aura as steady as a mountain, the beauty no longer existed in his eyes. His right foot took a step forward, and the bones in his body crackled. Violent blue battle chi scattered in all directions. Around his body, it was as if a whirlpool of walls had appeared. He was indeed a freak to be able to cultivate his wind attribute battle chi, which was known for its agility and speed, to such a violent realm. In the main teaching building, two people, one old and one young, walked out from the main door. High-stretched. Old, really old. It's only been 3 months, and my body can't take it anymore. The two people who walked out of the teaching building were Nian Bing and Hai, who had been bitterly studying magic. Their faces were pale, as if they hadn't seen the sun for a long time. Nian Bing smiled. "Teacher, don't say that. With your spiritual power, how can you feel tired?" He had gained a lot in the past 3 months. Because he realized the importance of the basics, he didn't study magic arrays anymore. Instead, when he was studying dual elemental magic with Evernight, he would immerse himself in meditation whenever he had the time. He would spend at least 15 to 16 hours a day meditating. In the past 3 months, he had learned a lot from Evernight, especially the application of dual elemental magic. Hai's knowledge of magic was extremely profound. Even Long Ji couldn't compare. Breathing in the fresh air of the field, he could clearly feel that he had become stronger. Hai let out a soft cry of surprise. "What's going on over there? Why are there so many people around? The atmosphere isn't right." "Little Nian Bing, let's go take a look." Nian Bing smiled. "Teacher, don't you hate crowds the most? I remember you saying yesterday that being alone is the most peaceful. Only in a state of tranquility and inaction can magic be improved better." Hai glared at Nian Bing. "You little brat, you can adapt to anything. It would be strange if you don't develop a solitary character if you're always alone." His words seemed to be reproaching, but the pampering in them was extremely obvious. In the past 3 months, Nian Bing's magic power had increased significantly. Similarly, Hai had also gained a deeper understanding of dual-element magic under Nian Bing's various novel ideas. He faintly felt that the problem he had been unable to solve for so long had a breakthrough. What he needed now was an instant enlightenment. He was only a step away from breaking through to the realm of a magic shooter. A dual-element mage could be said to be 1 in 10,000. Nian Bing's talent and intelligence were greatly appreciated by Hai. He had already regarded Nian Bing as his direct disciple. Nian Bing smiled. "Master, you've worked hard these days. This disciple doesn't have anything to repay you. Let's go to the cooking department later. I'll make you a good meal." Hai's eyes lit up, and he smiled. "I forgot that you're a student of the cooking department. It's fine. Didn't you only delay for 3 months? I'll tell that old pervert Zixio." A yellow light shone from Hai's body. He rubbed his hands lightly on the ground, and earth elements quickly condensed. The ground of the field suddenly protruded, bringing him and Nian Bing up 3 meters before stopping. "Teacher, although you're a magic shooter, you can even cast a level 3 spell instantly. You're really amazing." Nian Bing half-truthfully flattered Hai. When his gaze fell on the field surrounded by students, his body couldn't help but tremble. "Why is it her?" Hai also saw the scene in the center of the field from above. "What a beautiful little girl. You know her?" Nian Bing nodded. "Yes, she's my friend." The blue-clothed beauty was none other than Feng Nu, whom he hadn't seen for several months. Why was she here? Could it be that she was looking for him like Xuejing? That was impossible. Feng Nu couldn't have known his whereabouts. He continued to watch with a doubtful heart. At this time, Feng Nu and Zi Qingjian made their move. Zi Qingjian took half a step forward with his left foot and drew an arc in front of his chest with his right hand. He slowly retreated towards Feng Nu. Green aura condensed and didn't disperse. With a low shout, the aura actually condensed into a green ball of light and suddenly exploded towards Feng Nu. Seeing this, Nian Bing's heart couldn't help but tighten. However, the distance was too far. No matter what, he wouldn't be able to save Feng Nu in time. The Phoenix girl suddenly made a strange gesture. She raised her right palm, and her 4 fingers naturally drooped down. Her palm and forearm were at a 90-degree angle. In an instant, Her right hand turned completely fiery red. Seeing the green dochi ball in front of her, she didn't even try to dodge. Instead, she slapped her palm down. The moment the red light in her hand collided with the green dochi ball, a deafening explosion was heard. After the fire dochi and the wind dochi collided, a huge shockwave was produced. The shockwave spread out in all directions in a circular arc immediately. The surrounding students fell to the ground. Fortunately, they were only affected by the shockwave and only suffered minor injuries. The curious students finally sensed the danger and all retreated. This allowed the space around Feng Nu and Zi Qingjian to expand greatly. Hai saw this scene and said with some surprise, "Trader Qing's aura is improving really quickly, but that girl's aura seems a bit strange." She was able to neutralize Zi Qingjian's aura without spitting it out. The shockwave created by the aura disappeared. Feng Nu stood in her original position without moving. Zi Qingjian's expression changed slightly. He stood a meter away from the attack, leaving 2 deep marks on the ground. It was obvious that he couldn't neutralize the shockwave and was knocked away from his original position. Feng Nu smiled slightly. "Not bad. Your aura is very thick, but it's still lacking. If you don't have any more powerful abilities, go find another teacher or even your dean." Zi Qingjian's expression became serious. He knew that he represented the dignity of the academy. He couldn't lose so easily. "Take another move from me." Enveloped by the green duki, the purple purity sword soared into the air. His duki reached its peak in an instant. His hands formed the shape of claws, and he leapt at the phoenix girl like a hungry eagle pouncing on its prey. He shouted, "Take my life-tearing heavy eagle hand." In order to win, he finally used his ultimate technique. Feng Nu's expression became more serious. Her feet touched the ground, and she rushed towards Zi Qingjian. Her hands moved rhythmically like wings. The red aura dyed her entire body red. Her hands strangely rose up, directly blocking Zi Qingjian's heavy eagle hand. Nian Bing couldn't hold back any longer. He tore open a blizzard scroll and rushed towards the two in the air. He had heard Cha Chaji say that the heavy eagle hand could be used at will. When used at full force, it could easily tear apart an elephant's body. At this moment, he suddenly realized how important the Phoenix girl was to him. Even if he had to disregard everything, he would still save her. Did Feng Nu really need him to save her? Even though Nian Bing's movements were already very fast, there was no way he could make it in time. The strange red color of his hand gently imprinted itself onto the domineering heavy eagle claw. A loud phoenix cry was emitted from the Phoenix Maiden's mouth. The two of them clashed for a moment before separating. Their hands collided over 100 times in the air in an instant. The Phoenix Maiden returned to the ground at the same speed, while the purple purity sword was knocked flying. Nian Bing had just arrived at this moment. He instinctively caught Zi Qingjian in midair and used the blizzard scroll to bring him to the ground. He could clearly feel Zi Qingjian's breathing become abnormally rapid. His large, bony hands, which seemed extremely strong, were actually trembling slightly. He couldn't help but wonder, could it be that Feng Nu had won? After floating to the ground, Feng Nu also discovered Nian Bing. She looked at him in surprise. "Why are you here too?" Nian Bing was immediately sure that Feng Nu wasn't here to find him. Zi Qingjian landed on the ground. He looked at Feng Nu and said sincerely, "I lost. Thank you for showing mercy." Previously, when the two had fought in midair, Feng Nu's Do Chi had completely suppressed him. She had at least 3 chances to slit his throat. Others may not have seen it clearly, but how could he not have known? Feng Nu smiled slightly and said, "The strength of your heavy eagle hand is really great. It made up for the lack of Do Chi. It's a pity that the difference between your Do Chi and mine is too great. Otherwise, I really wouldn't have had the confidence to win against you." Lanming Academy is indeed a place with hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Nian Bing stood between the two. "Feng Nu, why did you fight with Qingjian Dage? She's here to challenge." Zi Qingming's cold voice sounded. When she discovered that Nian Bing and Feng Nu knew each other, she couldn't help but feel a burst of irritation in her heart. "Challenge?" Feng Nu, Nianbing looked at her with experience. Feng Nu smiled and said, "Can I challenge? If I want to improve my martial skills, the best way is to fight. That's why I'm here." "Nianbing, what about you?" Nianbing said, "I'm here to learn cooking and magic. You've already fought with Qing Jiandage, so don't challenge him again. There's no need to harm our friendship." Feng Nu's eyes flashed and said, "Nianbing, I hope you won't interfere in my matters. Before I lose, I will continue to challenge." Nianbing frowned. He felt Feng Nu's persistence. At this moment, he really didn't know which side he should stand on. Zi Qingming ridiculed. "Aren't you a magician? You're also a member of the Academy. You have the obligation to help the Academy welcome external challenges. If you have the ability, then defeat her." Feng Nu looked at Nianbing with interest and said with a smile, "Will you fight with me?" Nianbing was stunned for a moment. Then her eyes flashed. She said, "All right, then I'll accept your challenge on behalf of the Academy. Although I'm not a warrior, I still have the obligation." Feng Nu said with surprise, "You really want to fight with me?" Nianbing smiled and said, "Can I? I didn't expect your martial skills to be so strong. Even Qing Jiandage lost. However, I still want to try." Feng Nu also smiled. "I already understand Nianbing's intention." She shook her head gently. I won't be merciful." Nianbing turned and said to Zi Qingjian and Zi Qingjian, "Step back. I'll accept her challenge on behalf of the Academy." Zi Qingjian said, "But aren't you a friend?" Nianbing smiled and said, "Friend can also exchange pointers. Step back." She turned to face Feng Nu, and her right hand flashed twice. Sigh of the Frozen Goddess and Roar of the Fire God appeared in her hand. Feng Nu pulled out Parting Heaven and pointed at Nianbing. "Make your move." Nianbing's gaze sharpened, and a focused look appeared in his eyes. "Phoenix Girl, you're the first opponent that I've used the ice and fire homology technique with all my strength. My attacks are all-pervasive." Feng Nu smiled and said, "A warrior's speed is the greatest threat to a magician. Let's see how you deal with my attacks. Be careful." As soon as she finished speaking, her body floated up as if she were flying. In a flash, she appeared in front of Nianbing and pointed her scabbard at his shoulder. Nianbing didn't move. Just as the scabbard was about to hit his body, he suddenly raised his morning dew dagger. Was he going to use his dagger to block Parting Heaven? Of course not. Even Zi Qingjian's heavy eagle claw couldn't deal with Feng Nu's duki. How could he possibly block Feng Nu's sword? The morning dew dagger emitted a greenish-blue light and swung towards Feng Nu's wrist at an extremely fast speed. He didn't seem to care about the scabbard at all. Even 100 Nianbings couldn't break the Phoenix Lady's do chi, but the morning dew dagger could. The morning dew dagger, known as the Sigh of the Snow Goddess, was the nemesis of the Phoenix Lady's do chi. If it could break her fire attribute do chi, the Phoenix Lady wouldn't dare to let the dagger hit her. However, Parting Heaven was very long. She had absolute confidence that she could hit Nianbing first and then dodge her dagger. Therefore, she didn't release her duki and continued to hit him. At this moment, Nianbing smiled. Just as the scabbard was about to hit his body, an ice wall suddenly appeared between him and Feng Nu. The morning dew dagger in his hand slashed forward without any fanciful movements, changing dozens of positions in an instant and slashing towards Feng Nu's arm with a chilling aura. At this moment, if Feng Nu released her duki, the fourth-rank ice wall definitely wouldn't be able to block it. However, Nianbing's morning dew dagger would also cut her arm, so she didn't have the time to release her duki. Helpless, she could only turn around to save herself. The Parting Heaven sword in her hand flipped and blocked Nianbing's morning dew dagger. Nianbing didn't have duki. If he met force with force, not only would the morning dew dagger be sent flying, even he himself would be thrown up. However, even though he didn't have duki, the speed of his attack was incomparable to Feng Nu's. His attack was fast, so was his retraction. At the same time that Feng Nu turned around to save herself, he had already retracted his dagger. The ice wall instantly enlarged, blocking Feng Nu's path of advance. Meanwhile, he quickly retreated a few steps and used a steady voice to chant the magic he needed the most. "Great Ice Goddess, please lend me your fury and send us to the lost shore." blizzard. Under the sigh of the ice goddess, a blizzard quickly appeared in front of Nianbing. However, no matter how fast the magic was formed, it couldn't be faster than a warrior's movements. The ice wall was already completely shattered when the blizzard was halfway formed. Nianbing didn't panic. The sigh of the ice goddess and the roar of the fire god pointed forward at the same time. A fireball and an ice ball flew out at the same time, blocking Feng Nu's body. Feng Nu lightly waved the scabbard in her hand, and two red lights floated out to meet the magic attacking her. Her forward speed didn't decrease in the slightest. At this moment, the two magic spells that were originally moving forward suddenly stopped, and in a flash, they flew horizontally and collided with each other. The moment they collided was also the moment when Feng Nu rushed forward. In the violent explosion, Feng Nu's forward momentum came to an abrupt halt. Her red duki suddenly burst forth, completely blocking the power of the explosive flames. However, under her carelessness, the two extremes of ice and fire still gave her quite a bit of trouble, causing her to lose the opportunity to chase after Nianbing. In the distance, the Dark Knight sorcerer sighed in admiration. Good ice and fire are of the same origin. The blizzard carried Nianbing's body and flew up. When the magicians flew, the situation was not so favorable for the warriors. Of course, without the strength of a great magician or above, it was not easy to fly, especially for fire and earth magicians. It was simply impossible for them to fly. Floating in the air, Nianbing looked at Feng Nu, who had stopped in her tracks. She smiled and said, "Do you still want to continue? How about we call a draw?" Feng Nu unhappily said, "You wish. You think you can beat me like this? If I remember correctly, the blizzard can't fly too high, and it can't last for too long." Hearing her say so, Nianbing smiled and said, "Since it's like this, then please receive my attack." Rank 1 fireballs and ice balls covered the sky as they flew down with the two peerless blades used as magic staffs. Feng Nu snorted and finally unsheathed Parting Heaven Godly Sword. The fiery red light suddenly increased greatly. Under the urging of Do Qi, it actually brought out a red light that was 1 zhong long. Wherever the fire light passed, no matter if it was a spell of the same origin of ice or fire, it didn't have time to explode. Not a single spell could escape the fiery red light curtain. No matter how strong the origin of ice or fire was, it was impossible to rely on a rank 1 spell to defeat a powerful warrior like Feng Nu seeing the powerful sword light. The Z siblings couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Such a violent Do Qi, coupled with the flashing red light of a long sword, wasn't something they could resist. This was Feng Nu's true strength. Zi Qingming whispered to her brother, "Is she a martial artist?" Zi Qingming nodded and said, "Not only is she a martial artist, but she's a martial artist close to swordsman. I really don't know how she trained at such a young age." Nianbing bitterly smiled at Feng Nu in the air. His attack had already stopped. Should he use a powerful spell to attack? Nianbing didn't want to. What if he hurt Feng Nu? But she was already riding a tiger and couldn't get off. Feng Nu clearly didn't want to find a way out. What should she do now? Feng Nu looked at Nianbing and slowly raised Parting Heaven Sword her hand. "Nianbing, don't hold back. Let me see how strong your magic is." Just as Nianbing was hesitating whether or not to continue this battle, an old voice sounded. "Nianbing, come down. I think this lady came to Lanmeng to find me." At this time, the field was already surrounded by thousands of students, but this old voice still clearly traveled to everyone's ears. Looking down, Nianbing saw the crowd retreat to the sides like a tide. A tall old man with a hunched back slowly walked into the circle. He recognized this old man. It was the old man who had reminded him of the importance of the basics 3 months ago. "Dean, Dean," respectful voices continuously sounded. The old man smiled and gestured to the surrounding students. When he walked into the circle, the Zi Qingming siblings lowered their heads. "Father!" Nianbing almost fell from the sky. He never would have thought that the old man who had swept the floor was the Zi Qingming siblings' father. He was also the dean of the martial arts department and the dean of Lanmeng Academy. The old man faced Feng Nu, who was holding parting heaven's sword, and smiled. Little girl, I was right. Your elders must have asked you to find a blade called Purple Dream. I am Purple Dream. The Phoenix girl put the parting heaven sword behind her back and nodded to Ziming. She said, Hello, Mr. Dean. I am here to exchange pointers with you. Purple Dream smiled faintly and said, Why won't those elders of yours let go of me, these old bones? Since that's the case, then please. Feng Nu glanced at Nian Bing, who had already landed on the ground. His expression suddenly became serious. The red dough chi continued to rise, making his body look like a ball of fire. At this time, the ground suddenly shook. The ground around Feng Nu and Purple Dream suddenly protruded from the ground. The surrounding students could only watch as the ground lifted off the ground until it reached 10 feet. Purple Dream's gaze drifted towards the school building. Thank you, old friend. Only Nian Bing's new teacher, Dark Knight, was able to use earth magic to such an astounding level. Dark Knight's voice came from afar. Old Purple, don't embarrass yourself. Unknowingly, Zixio had already come to his side and was looking at them from afar. Purple Dream didn't say anything. He made a gesture to Feng Nu. Feng Nu's expression didn't change because of the change in the ground. The 9 abandonment do chi on her body burned even more fiercely. She slowly raised the parting heaven sword. Suddenly, she moved. The long sword in her hand instantly swung forward and slashed out a red light blade that went straight for Purple Dream. Her body followed the sword as she rushed towards Purple Dream. The moment she left her original position, the red dough chi around her suddenly changed, turning into a faint silver. Because she was so fast, she left behind a string of afterimages in the air. Nian Bing didn't understand martial arts, but she heard Zi Qingjian exclaim in a low voice, It really is swordsman's Saint Do Chi. Although she barely reached it, she has already taken one step into swordsman's door. The same silver light came from Purple Dream's body. The silver light on his body was much thicker than that of Feng Nu's. It blocked Feng Nu's attack very naturally. There was no explosion. The silver light suddenly expanded under Feng Nu's lightning-fast movements. It was very difficult to see their battle from the outside. Nian Bing asked Zi Qingjian in a low voice, Brother Zi Qingjian, what is Saint Do Chi? Zi Qingjian explained, Saint Do Chi can be said to be the highest realm that warriors pursue. No matter what attribute the Do Chi is, as long as it reaches the Saint Do Chi realm, its color will turn silver. This is the symbol of swordsman. Other than the legendary golden god Do Chi of divine masters, Saint Do Chi is the strongest. 15 years ago, my father reached the swordsman realm at the age of 47. He was known as the youngest swordsman. Since then, Lanmeng Academy's name has shaken the continent. Together with the other 6 swordsmen, they are known as the 7 sages of the continent. But this girl looks to be around 20 years old, and she has already entered the swordsman realm. It is really hard to believe. Chapter 52. Swordsman, Swordsman, and Magister were at the same level. Hearing Zi Qingjian's words, Nian Bing was also stunned. He himself had not yet entered the Magister realm, but Feng Nu was already close to Swordsman, who was equivalent to a Magister. Saint Do Chi, what a joke. He had even wanted to find an excuse to stop her from continuing the challenge. This only showed that he had overestimated himself. With her Do Chi cultivation, even if there was a blizzard, he would not be able to dodge her attacks. While his thoughts were running wild, the 2 people on the platform were already having a great time fighting. When Nian Bing raised his head again, he discovered that the 2 people on the platform had already disappeared. Just as he was about to ask, he heard 2 sharp sounds, which seemed to be produced by Do Chi cutting through the air. 2 figures floated to the sides of the platform. Purple Dream was still as calm as ever, but Feng Nu's face was somewhat pale. The Do Chi on her body had returned to the color of flames. It seemed that her clothes and pink hair were somewhat disheveled. Her full chest was undulating as she looked at Purple Dream. Silence. The entire field had become abnormally silent. I lost. Feng Nu's voice was very calm. Purple Dream smiled and said, Although I have the upper hand, the outcome has not been decided yet. You had the chance to destroy both of us. Feng Nu shook her head and said, No, I used the parting heaven godly sword to force a tie. If you had a weapon in hand, I would have lost long ago, not to mention the chance to take you down with me. I will come again. Zimeng smiled and said, You don't have to come again. In 10 years, your martial arts will definitely surpass mine. Your seniors have finally succeeded in cultivating the Xiantian 9 separations body. However, your weakness is that you can't balance the qi in your do qi. If you can keep your do qi in check, even if I have a weapon in my hand, it won't be easy to beat you. When you go back, you can tell them that I lost a bet that year. If there's a chance, tell them to come find me for a drink. I will let Zi Xiu personally cook. It has been many years. How are their bodies? Feng Nu's eyes were filled with respect. The elders are still in good health. Thank you for your guidance and for fighting with you. Feng Nu has benefited a lot. Purple Dream smiled and said, If you are willing, you can stay in the academy and cultivate for a while. Maybe I can teach you something. Feng Nu's eyes flashed. She shook her head and said, Thank you for your kindness, but I still have other things to do. I must leave as soon as possible. Purple Dream said, All right then. Remember to relay my words to your seniors. Feng Nu nodded and jumped down from the earthen platform. Her figure flashed. The magic aura on the platform suddenly thickened. Nian Bing had already flown up. Feng Nu, can you wait for a while before leaving? Feng Nu was stunned. Nian Bing smiled. He said, I haven't seen you for several months. I want to cook a meal for you. A meal won't take up too much of your time. Feng Nu also smiled. All right, I haven't eaten delicious food for many days. Seeing Nian Bing again, she was also happy. However, this time she had fully displayed her strength in front of Nian Bing. She was originally afraid that Nian Bing would hold a grudge. But now it seemed that he didn't have any dissatisfaction. Nian Bing turned her gaze to Purple Dream and said respectfully, Dean, thank you for your guidance. It has benefited me greatly. Today I have something to trouble you with. Purple Dream smiled and said, Young man, your magic has reached such a level at such a young age. Moreover, you are a magician of the same origin of ice and fire. Your future is limitless. If you have something to ask, just say it. Nian Bing's eyes shone brightly. He said in a deep voice, I want to ask you to host a competition. I also want a challenge. Challenge? Purple Dream was stunned. Who do you want to challenge? Nian Bing smiled indifferently. He said, I want to challenge the dean of the cooking department, Senior Camel Chef Zi Xiu. I hope you can agree. Purple Dream smiled and said, I heard from Zi Xiu that you are the successor of the ghost chef. However, even if you defeat Zi Xiu, what's the point? Why don't you just compare notes with each other? There's no need to make the challenge so serious. Nian Bing shook his head and said, No, this is very important to me. Senior Zi Xiu said that as long as I can defeat him, he will tell me something. Purple Dream's eyes revealed a look of surprise. Camel Chef Zi Xiu had already reached the platform with a few leaps. Young man, you really want to challenge me? I once said that you must defeat my 2 disciples before you have the right to challenge me. Nian Bing said indifferently, Senior Zi Xiu, I don't think you need to go through so much trouble. With my cooking skills, Brother Qing Jian and Miss Qing Ming can't defeat me. I still have this much confidence. Zi Xiu laughed and said, Then where does your confidence come from? Nian Bing looked up at him and said calmly, Magic. Magic? Zi Xiu looked at Nian Bing in surprise. Nian Bing nodded and repeated, Yes, it is magic. Zi Xiu fell in a deep thought and said after a while, So, the reason you know magic is because you want to integrate it into your cooking. That old man Cha Ji really rose from where he fell. Nian Bing said, Now I should have the qualifications to challenge you. Using magic in cooking is my biggest advantage. I may not be as good as you in terms of cooking skills, but I have enough confidence in myself. Camel Chef Zi Xiu turned to Zi Meng and said, Big brother, you approve his challenge. I want to see how much he has learned from Cha Ji. Nian Bing, I will wait for you at the Academy Hotel. As soon as he finished speaking, he floated up and instantly accelerated while wrapped in blue do qi. He flew over the heads of the students and disappeared after a few jumps. Although he didn't have the strength of his brother Ziming, the swordsman, his martial skills had reached the boundary of a martial artist's realm. Ziming looked deeply at Nianbing and suddenly smiled. I haven't seen little brother Xiao so serious in a long time. Young man, you have to work hard. I also want to taste the delicacies brought about by magic. Old Black, you come too. Miss Feng, please. Nianbing, Ziming, Feng Nu, Zi Qingjian, and Hei left the academy and came to the hotel where Li San had brought Nianbing. Although the students also wanted to see this fierce battle, the hotel was only so big. Moreover, Ziming had given strict orders that no one was allowed to skip class. They could only watch and sigh. With a faint smile, Nianbing calmed down. It was Feng Nu's challenge to Ziming that ignited his competitive spirit. He was very clear that although Feng Nu came to challenge Ziming, she definitely knew that she wasn't a match for a swordsman like Ziming. However, she still didn't back down and used all of her strength to challenge Ziming. Since he had challenged Zi Xiao, he had a chance of winning. Why wait? He had already wasted a lot of time in the academy. The time for the new magician competition was getting closer and closer. In these 3 months, he had finally found some secrets to the true fusion of ice and fire. As long as he went to Aolon City and completed Luo Ro's task, he could find a place to cultivate in peace. A place like the academy was not suitable for him. It was still not suitable for him. He was used to living a free life, so any restrictions would make him feel awkward. Thus, Nianbing chose this time to challenge Zi Xiao in front of Principal Ziming. When they arrived at the restaurant, Zi Xiao had already changed into a chef's robe. Seeing Nianbing's arrival, he said, "Kid, choose a martial arts competition, lest you say that I'm bullying you." Nianbing smiled and said, "In war, there's a saying that goes, quality is more important than quantity. Our culinary skills can also be used. I'll compete with you in a dish that I'm best at. Then, I'll invite everyone here to judge and decide the winner. I hope you don't forget what you said before. If I win, you have to tell me who my master's enemy is." Zi Xiao snorted and said, "Kid, you're very confident. When I became famous, who knows where you were?" Nianbing smiled. She said, "Senior Zi Xiao, are you afraid?" Zi Xiao's heart shook. That's right, looking at this confident kid in front of him. Why did his confidence disappear? A light flashed in his eyes, and his lost aura reappeared. "I'll give you an hour to choose the ingredients you need. After an hour, we'll decide the winner. I'd like to see how you'll use all the skills your master taught you in a dish." Nianbing nodded and said, "All right, this junior would also like to experience the hunchback god of cooking skills." Feng Nu walked to Nian Nu's side and said with a smile, "Is there anything you need my help with?" Nianbing shook his head and said, "There's no need for that. Just wait and eat. After leaving my master, I haven't cooked with all my strength. Today, I'll let you have a taste of my ice and fire feast. I'm sure I'll win." Zi Xiao said, "Nianbing, I won't take advantage of you. Little Meng, you'll be in charge of preparing the ingredients for me. Qingjian, you'll help Nianbing. No matter what he needs, as long as it can be bought in the city, satisfy him." Zi Qingjian came to Nianbing's side. "Brother, what ingredients do you need?" Nianbing smiled and asked him to find a pen and paper. She carefully wrote down what she needed and handed it to Zi Qingjian. Zi Qingjian gave it a cursory glance and immediately went to prepare it. Purple Dream and Zi Xiao went to the side to chat, while Black Knight sat there with his eyes closed. It was unknown whether he was meditating or dozing off. It was currently afternoon, and there weren't many guests at lunch. A peak showdown of the culinary world was about to begin. "Feng Nu, didn't you go to the Longmu Empire? Why did you come here to challenge Headmaster Purple Dream?" Nianbing asked in a low voice. Feng Nu glanced at him and said, "I've finished my business there, so I'm also traveling the continent, challenging experts to perfect my skills. What about you? Why are you here?" Nianbing said, "I originally wanted to go to Aolon City, but I heard that the Ottoman Empire was at war with the Huasheng and Qilu empires, so I came here first. I haven't seen you for a few months, and you seem to have become even prettier." Seeing the smile on Nianbing's face, Feng Nu blushed slightly. When did you learn to be so glib? The war ended a month ago, and the empires were simply bluffing. However, it said that the Ottoman Empire suffered heavy losses this time. Dozens of cities were plundered, and in the end, the Ice Moon Empire's Ice God Magician Legion and the Ice Moon Empire's Trump Card Knights arrived to resolve the war. The Ottoman Empire wanted to retaliate, but the Huasheng and Qilu empires retreated to their own borders and set up heavy defenses. Because the cities at the borders were plundered, the Ottoman Empire's resources couldn't keep up, and the Ice Moon Empire was also on an expedition, so they could only leave the matter unsettled. However, this war seems to indicate that the continent won't be peaceful again, Nian Bing said with some doubt. Then what about the Longmu Empire? Didn't they participate in the war? From what I heard, the Longmu Empire has always been at odds with the Huarong Empire. The two empires share a border, so why not take advantage of such a good opportunity? If the three empires combine their strength, they might be able to defeat the Huarong Empire and Qilu Empire. Feng Nu's eyes flashed. How could it be that easy? The Huarong Empire's strength is much stronger than we imagined. They have countless experts. Although this time they launched an attack against the Ottoman Empire, their Order of the Flaming Lion has always been guarding the border with the Longmu Empire. The Longmu Empire once tried to attack them, and even caused the Longmu Empire to suffer quite a bit. Fortunately, the war has temporarily stopped, and there shouldn't be another war for a while. As for what will happen in the future, it's hard to say. Nian Bing, are you sure you can beat that camel chef? Nian Bing smiled bitterly and shook her head. She said seriously, how can I be sure? The ostrich god of cookery was already famous 30 years ago, and was ranked third among the 5 gods of cookery. My knowledge of Senior Zixio is only limited to what my master told me. 20 years have passed, and who knows what new research Senior Zixio has done. I can only try my best. My advantage lies in magic, and my chances of winning are only 50-50. However, I have a way to greatly increase my chances of winning. It depends on whether you can help me or not. Feng Nu stared blankly for a moment and asked doubtfully, Me? What can I help you with? You know that I only know how to cook porridge. It's already good enough that I don't cause trouble for you. Nian Bing still had a serious look on her face. No, you can help me a lot. You have to know that as an outstanding chef, my mood determines whether I can bring out my culinary skills to the fullest. If I have your help, I can wholeheartedly immerse myself in cooking. In a happy mood, I can naturally make more delicious food. I just don't know if you're willing to. Feng Nu smiled and said, This is related to the whereabouts of your master's enemy. As long as I can help, just say it. I'll definitely help you. Nian Bing's face changed. His originally serious, handsome face had a trace of a smile. He said in a low voice, It's very simple. If you promise to let me kiss you after I win, my mood will naturally be happy. Feng Nu's face turned red. How could she have thought that Nian Bing would suddenly say such words? She pretended to hit him. Hateful, you're actually taking advantage of me. Nian Bing hurriedly dodged to the side. Don't hit me. I can't withstand your saint battle chi. I'm not joking. It's the truth. If you don't believe me, you can try and see if I'm lying. Feng Nu snorted and said, Who wants to try? Hateful. If you keep talking, I'll ignore you. Nian Bing laughed and said, Okay, I won't say it. Feng Nu, you're so cute when you're blushing. Seeing Feng Nu again, he always had an impulse in his heart. He didn't know why, but at this time, he only had Feng Nu in his heart. The nervousness he should have had before the competition with the camel god of cooking did not appear. With Feng Nu's gaze, he found that his confidence had greatly increased and his whole body was exceptionally comfortable. Feng Nu angrily glared at him. Her face was still red as she said in a low voice, Don't joke around. Aren't you going to think about what dish you're going to cook later? I believe you have the ability to win. Green, take from blue and surpass blue. Ice, water, colder than water. The older generation will always be replaced by the younger generation. Today is a very good opportunity. I believe that as long as you can win this competition, you will gain confidence, and you will definitely be able to improve your culinary skills to the next level. Just like when I compare notes with people, Your culinary skills also need to compare notes with experts to have a greater improvement. Pressure makes people move forward. Believe in yourself. You can definitely do it. Maybe in a few years, the continent will no longer have the memories of the five god of cooking, but only the ice and fire chef. With Feng Nu's encouragement, Ling Yanbing's heart was moved. This was a true friend. The encouragement at the crucial moment often played a huge role. Clenching his fist, Yanbing looked at Feng Nu with a firm gaze and nodded. He no longer spoke and sat on the chair beside him. He closed his eyes and began to meditate like the night. Only when his mental state was maintained at the best level could he display his strength. An hour was neither too long nor too short. When Yanbing opened his eyes once again, Jiang Chun was stunned. Everything had been prepared. The restaurant's kitchen was divided into two parts. All the kitchen utensils were present. Feng Nu, Zi Ming, Zi Qingjian, Zi Qingming, and the knights sat in a row by the wall. The camel chef, Zi Xiao, seemed to have finished his preparations and was standing behind the kitchen table, preparing something. Standing up, Nian Bing slightly nodded towards Zi Xiao and said, "Senior, can we begin?" Zi Xiao nodded and said, "Begin. An hour is the limit. An hour should be enough for you to display your skills. After all, there is only one dish." Nian Bing smiled and said, "It is indeed enough. Senior, please." Just as he was about to walk toward his own kitchen, the Phoenix girl's voice suddenly rang out. "You're right. Nian Bing, wait a moment." Nian Bing looked back in shock. Feng Nu had already stood up, and her figure flashed. Nian Bing felt a fragrant wind hit his nose. It was the unique fragrance of a woman. Something cold lightly touched his face. When he came back to his senses, everything had already disappeared. Feng Nu was standing a meter away from him. Her blushing face was as cute as a red apple. It looked like he was itching to take a bite. She said in a low voice, "I hope you aren't lying to me. I'll wait to taste your ice and fire feast. If you win, I can consider your previous proposal." After saying this, her figure flashed again and she returned to her seat. Zi Qingming and Zi Qingjian's expressions changed. Zi Qingjian sadly lowered his head. He secretly glanced at Feng Nu from the corner of his eyes and sighed. Zi Qingming's eyes flashed with a trace of jealousy. Her hands gripped the armrests of her chair, and she looked at Feng Nu with a sharp gaze. Nian Bing touched her face. That warm feeling lingered for a long time. She took a deep look at the Phoenix maiden and nodded firmly at her. Then, she went to her kitchen table. He could clearly feel the blood in his body boiling. His hands trembled with excitement, and his fingers and wrists became more flexible. He knew that this was the feeling of being at his peak. He pressed his hands against the table and looked up. At this time, Zi Xiao was also looking at him. Their gazes met in the air and intense sparks flew. Zi Xiao smiled and said, "Boy, you have a bright future ahead of you." Nian Bing blushed and smiled back. "Compared to you, I'm a far cry from you. Please." Taking a step back, red on the left and blue on the right, two lights faintly flashed on Nian Bing's skin. His powerful aura suddenly rose. It was as if what was in front of him was no longer cooking utensils and ingredients, but an enemy. Camel Chef Zi Xiao did not move. He looked at the sudden change in Nian Bing's aura. When they first met, Nian Bing had challenged him. From the confidence that Nian Bing showed at that time, he must have extraordinary strength. But at that time, Zi Xiao did not pay too much attention to it. After all, cooking was directly proportional to one's maturity. In his eyes, Nian Bing was still too inexperienced. However, when he discovered that Nian Bing actually possessed both ice and fire magic at the same time, this kind of underestimation disappeared. He knew very well how Ghost Chef Cha Ji had been defeated. Magic had a very strong influence on food. Therefore, he didn't dare to let his guard down. The ingredients he prepared were the dish he was best at. At this time, he was not anxious at all. He wanted to see how profound the culinary skills of Nian Bing, who was called the Ice and Fire Chef by Feng Nu, was. Nian Bing raised his right hand and waved it forward lightly, the whisper of the wind of freedom, proud heaven blade. Releasing a green light, the strangely shaped proud heaven blade was inserted on the chopping board. The light emitted by the whisper stone dyed the whole kitchen green. The blade trembled slightly, like a whisper. Although the sound was very soft, it was so clear. The airflow in the kitchen moved, following the movement of the proud heaven blade. That was the rhythm of the wind. The thick wind element was like a vortex that revolved around the proud heaven blade. Purple Dream's family all cultivated wind, attribute Do Chi. At this time, seeing this wind attribute peerless godly blade, their faces could not help but change. Looking at each other, Purple Dream praised, "What a divine wind, attribute treasure blade." And Black Knight praised, "What a divine wind, attribute magic staff." Unfortunately, I am not a wind attribute magician. Otherwise, I would definitely borrow it. Nian Bing did not use a magic array to seal the proud heaven blade, because it was not needed. The sigh of the ice goddess, Morning Dew Blade. Nian Bing's voice paused for a moment, then her wrist shook again. The blue light was inserted next to the proud heaven blade. However, the blue light on the blade was much weaker than the green light of the proud heaven blade. Nian Bing's movements did not stop. Her right hand's index finger was filled with ice element, and like lightning, she outlined a blue magic hexagram. In the center of the hexagram, she used a piercing method to inscribe a very small but exceptionally exquisite magic array. The blue light suddenly shone brightly, and the magic array was directly imprinted on the ice goddess stone. The magic array on the god stone was finally undone. In an instant, a blue light soared into the sky. Immediately, the green light was forced to the side. The green and blue light reflected each other in the sky, as if they were equals. Including Purple Dream, Black Knight, and other than Feng Nu, everyone stared with their eyes wide open. They were all asking themselves, did they not see wrongly? Was this another divine tool-level treasure blade? Before Nian Bing finished her movements, the broad Jingyang saber was the last to appear. The temperature that had dropped because of the Morning Dew blade returned to normal with the appearance of the Jingyang saber. The roar of the fire god, Jingyang's saber. The red light flowed on the surface of the Jingyang saber, and the stone of fire seemed to come alive, emitting a scorching light. Green, blue, and red, these three colors filled the kitchen with a dense aura of treasures. They emitted a faint divine light, causing Nian Bing to completely suppress Camel Chef Zi Xiu's aura. In order to do a good job, one must first sharpen one's tools. The appearance of the treasure blade caused Nian Bing's confidence to reach its peak. Purple Dream smiled and said, "Nian Bing, you have so many treasures. If it weren't for the fact that you are a bit older, I would really advise you to change your martial arts." Nian Bing smiled and said, "Dean, I won't let them go to waste. That's right, they're all peerless treasures, but they're also my magic staffs. Most importantly, they're kitchen knives that can fully unleash my culinary skills. I'm going to start." Hearing the word kitchen knife, Purple Dream almost spat out blood. Such a good treasure blade was actually used as a kitchen knife. He was speechless. Nian Bing grabbed a hen from the ingredients at the side and placed it on the chopping board. She quickly cut open its stomach and cleaned it. Then, she used a large iron pot to boil a pot of hot water. The wind of freedom jumped into her hand. With proud heaven's sharpness and her own acceleration ability, the green lightning-like blade flashed continuously. The whole chicken was cut into small pieces without any fancy moves. Nian Bing did not put the chicken pieces directly into the pot. Instead, she washed them in the clear water at the side. The peak showdown began at this moment. Zixio also moved. He also boiled a pot of water. However, he immediately added scallions, ginger, pepper, and a clean duck into the water. His movements did not stop. He took a basin of clear water. His eyes flashed, and he took 2 palm-sized pieces of something that looked like meat, but was not meat, and soaked them in the water. He took the basin and poured it on top. After thinking for a moment, he cracked 2 eggs and added a little water. Then he began to knead the dough. His movements were very slow, but each of them was abnormally powerful. All of the dough seemed to be absorbed by his hands, without the slightest splash. On the other side, Nian Bing also began to display her unique culinary skills. The washed chicken pieces had been changed to another basin of water. This time, Nian Bing did not simply wash them. In the light sound of the water, her hands became faster and faster. Like a butterfly flying through flowers, she constantly danced in the water. The rhythm of her hands did not follow common sense at all. It was as if her wrists did not have joints. Because of the speed of her hands, it formed a mirage on the surface of the water. Strangely, the water did not splash because of the interference of her hands. Instead, it formed regular ripples. Good bone-splitting hand. You have learned all of old Ja's skills. Your control is not bad. No wonder you were so confident. Zi Xiao, who was kneading the dough, couldn't help but praise Nian Bing when he saw the shape of her hands. Nian Bing raised her head to look at Zi Xiao. She smiled and said, "Senior, you must be joking. It's just a small trick." After saying this, she changed the basin of water again and continued to wash the chicken pieces. Zi Qingjian, who was sitting to the side, asked his sister with some confusion, "Xiaoming, what do you think Nian Bing is doing? Those chicken pieces will rot if you continue to wash them." When the chicken was brought here, it was already clean. At this time, Zi Qingming's eyes no longer contained any negative emotions. Instead, they were completely replaced by excitement. Zi Qingjian had learned the heavy eagle hands mainly to strengthen his own martial skills. As for her, she had learned the culinary arts purely out of interest. After many years of practicing the culinary arts, she had already become extremely fond of this line of work. She was completely immersed in the battle between the two peak experts of the culinary world. At this time, she had already raised Nian Bing to the same level as her uncle Zi Xiao. When she heard her brother's question, she subconsciously said, "Look carefully. The bone-splitting hand is one of the 7 great forbidden hands of the culinary world. It is ranked 3rd. It is only slightly inferior to Uncle's life-tearing heavy eagle hands. But from Nian Bing's technique, he has already practiced the bone-splitting hand to the point of being able to rotate freely. I really don't know how he practiced it. The reason why he used the bone-splitting hand to wash the chicken pieces is because he wants to completely wash out the blood from the chicken pieces. This way, it won't affect the taste of the chicken. The most important part of the bone-splitting hand is the squeezing technique. Whether it is applied to pasta or washing vegetables, it is the best technique. Uncle's heavy eagle hands is different from the bone-splitting hand in terms of application. It is hard to say who is better. No, there's another reason why he used the bone-splitting hand, and that is to crush the chicken bones. It seems that he wants to use them to make soup. The chicken pieces were finally washed. At this time, the water in the iron pot was boiling. The chicken pieces in Yin Bing's hand had already turned into a round ball. It looked a bit ridiculous. He directly put the chicken pieces into the boiling water and picked up the wind of freedom. With a few lightning-fast slashes, the chicken pieces were split into small pieces. Nian Bing's movements began to speed up. He first put the shark's fin into the boiling water, then cut the soaked abalone and shiitake mushrooms into the water. Finally, he put in a few slices of ginger and scallions. Only then did he close the lid. Chapter 53. Taking a step back, Nian Bing grabbed the righteous yang blade from the chopping board. With the blade facing down and the stone of fire facing up, she chanted in a low voice, "O great god of fire, please allow me, with your left hand, to let fire descend upon the mortal realm, to extinguish all evil. Let the fire illuminate the earth, to destroy all obstacles in the way." Fire god's left hand. One by one, red dots of light gathered around the stone of fire. The dots of light grew brighter and brighter. Nian Bing pointed the hilt of the blade forward, and the huge fire god's left hand appeared. The entire iron pot floated under the fire god's left hand, completely covered in flames. Nian Bing suddenly let out a low shout. Her left hand drew a red hexagram in the air. She slapped her palm forward, and the hexagram instantly entered the fire god's left hand. In an instant, the crimson light of the fire god's left hand turned into a purple flame, forcibly raising the 5th-step fire spell to the 6th step. Black Knight said in surprise, "Magic Array Enhancement. I didn't expect this kid to have such a skill." In the past 3 months, Nian Bing had been discussing the mysteries of dual element magic with him. This was the first time he had seen her talent in magic arrays. Any magic could be enhanced through magic arrays. However, the drawing of magic arrays was the most difficult part. For example, Nianbing could draw a magic array out of thin air and immediately insert it into the spell. This required a sufficient understanding of magic arrays, as well as familiarity with the fire element. Generally speaking, only magicians who specialized in magic arrays could achieve this. Under the effect of the level 6 purple flame, the iron pot was already burning red, but the lid of the pot did not open because of the boiling water in the iron pot. This was because the lid had already completely fused with the iron pot under the effect of the extremely hot flames. However, the heat in the pot continued to expand, and there was a possibility that it could explode at any time. Nianbing's expression was very calm. Controlling the purple flame, the fire god's left hand placed the iron pot back on the stove. 3 ice needles transformed from ice balls flew out, instantly opening 3 small holes on the lid of the pot. The ice needles naturally melted into water when they entered the pot, and the iron pot that was about to explode was also resolved due to the steam rising from the 3 holes. Nianbing ignored the iron pot and put a big winter melon on the chopping board. At this time, Zixiu had already finished kneading the dough. The dough was kneaded into a round ball in his big hands. Nianbing's actions were completely under his observation. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Using magic to cook really did have an innate advantage. He opened his iron pot. He stirred the ingredients. He took out the 2 objects that were previously soaked in the clear water and placed them on the table. He shouted. He slapped one of the stones with his palm. With a bang, the red liquid splattered everywhere. Zixiu's palm pressed down and turned, immediately placing the red object on the chopping board. His right hand opened like a claw, reaching in and grabbing at lightning speed. With another bang, the other red object was pressed flat on the chopping board. Immediately after, his hands transformed into countless claw shadows. Every time he attacked, his fingers accurately pierced into the already flat red object. His 10 fingers were like giant hammers, constantly chiseling, turning the 2 red objects into meat paste. Heavy eagle claw, this was one of the heavy techniques. In a short span of 10 breaths, the 2 red objects had turned into paste, but the chopping board didn't suffer any damage from the heavy eagle claw. His control of power had already reached the peak. Putting the red meat paste into the pot, the old duck soup immediately emitted a rich fragrance with the addition of the meat paste. On the opposite side, Nianbing's nose twitched. She raised her head and looked at Zixiu in surprise. Good method. The foie gras is mixed into the old duck. The 2 ingredients complement each other, and the taste is completely displayed. Senior Zixiu's skills are indeed exquisite. Some foods could complement each other. For example, the old hen and midday mushrooms used by Nianbing could set off each other's aroma, producing the best effect. In addition to the freshness of the abalone and shark's fin and the method of stewing under extreme heat, the flavors of the ingredients were completely merged together. This soup was the best combination that Nianbing knew of at the moment. The combination that Zixiu used was something she had never seen before. However, from the aroma, she could already tell that it was a pair of ingredients that complemented each other. In order to research such a pair of ingredients, countless attempts were needed. Nianbing had studied cooking for 8 years, but she had only discovered a few simple combinations. The fact that Zixiu dared to use such a combination showed how much research he had into cooking. Zixiu and Nianbing looked at each other. Both of them looked at each other sympathetically. Even though their competition had just begun, they could already tell from each other's actions that they had a deep understanding of the culinary arts. Nianbing's culinary skills were mainly reflected in the word strange, while Zixiu's culinary skills were mediocre, displaying traditional culinary skills to the limit. His first actions seemed simple, but without tens of years of research and hard work, it was absolutely impossible to reach that level of perfection. It could no longer be described as skilled. His actions seemed very slow, but it was something that ordinary chefs wouldn't be able to do in 3 hours. What was Nianbing doing now? The top of the winter melon in his hand had been removed. The top of the winter melon was cut into a sawtooth shape with a proud heaven knife. The inner melon ladle had been taken out, leaving only 2 inches of the melon wall. Anyone who had studied cooking for a few years would understand that Nien Bing was trying to make a winter melon cup. He was using the winter melon as a vessel to hold soup or porridge. For the sake of the beauty of the winter melon cup, carving was necessary. Under normal circumstances, different patterns would be carved on the skin of the winter melon with a carving knife. However, would Nien Bing do that? Of course not. Carving flat surfaces in the hands of a chef of his level would only lower his status. In order to achieve the best results, he had already made preparations. When he was preparing to compete with Zi Xiao, he already had a plan in mind. However, he wasn't sure if it would succeed. Taking a deep breath, Nien Bing glanced at Feng Nu beside him. Feng Nu gave him an encouraging look. Nien Bing only felt the blood in his chest boil. His confidence reached the peak in an instant. With a wave of his right hand, the proud heaven knife returned to the chopping board. When his hand returned to his body, he had already replaced it with a morning dew knife. He carefully placed the winter melon cup in the center of a large plate about 2 feet in diameter. After adjusting the position and confirming that the winter melon was in the center, he took a deep breath. Nien Bing's hand moved. The shadow of Lan Meng's funeral knife seemed to carry a layer of icy mist. With a light chop, a hair-thin winter melon skin separated from the melon and lay flat on the plate. The knife technique he was most familiar with appeared once again. However, this time he didn't completely chop the melon. Instead, he peeled the skin. A blue light constantly flashed on the plate. Every green melon strand lay evenly on the plate. It was exquisite to the point of perfection. There were only a few gaps between each strand of melon skin, and they were extremely even. Zi Qingming had already stood up because of excitement. Silk cocoon knife technique. Although it's not one of the 5 famous knife techniques, if it was ranked as the 6th knife technique, it would definitely be silk cocoon knife technique. She knew very well that Nien Bing's culinary skills were definitely not inferior to her uncle's from the knife skills that he had displayed. One had to know that there was no shortcut in knife skills, and it had nothing to do with magic. It was definitely the result of hard work. Gently rotating the plate, Nien Bing's expression was as calm as an ancient well, without the slightest change. His knife flashed, and the morning dew brought with it an icy mist that permeated the air around the melon. The reason why he used the knife technique to peel the melon skin was very simple. It was because he wanted to keep the melon skin as round as possible. The thinner the skin, the easier it would be to achieve his goal. Zi Xiao also saw Nien Bing's spinning silk knife technique, and a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. However, he did not stop what he was doing. He placed a piece of tenderloin about 1 foot long on the chopping board, then took out the dough that he had kneaded and kneaded it into the same shape as the tenderloin. The 2 different materials were placed vertically on the chopping board in front of him. In the next moment, he began to slap the tenderloin. His movements were very violent, like a storm. Every slap had a violent momentum, and the banging sound were like the beating of a drum. His left hand slapped the dough, and his right hand slapped the tenderloin. He kept repeating the same actions. Nien Bing's melon skin was finally finished with the banging sounds from Zi Xiao's side. The dark green skin of the melon was removed, and the jade-like flesh of the melon was revealed. All the skin of the melon had been placed at the bottom of the plate, like the lotus leaves under the melon cup. Of course, the melon cup was not only sparkling because of itself, but also because of the task of the morning dew knife. The reason why Nien Bing didn't choose the faster surface of the proud heaven knife and chose the morning dew knife was because he had to evenly inject the ice element into the melon cup during the process of cutting the silk. At this moment, the melon cup was completely frozen, but it couldn't be distinguished from its appearance. Nien Bing had his own reasons for doing this, and also to prepare for the following actions. The meat of the melon was relatively soft. If it was just a normal carving, he might be able to complete it. However, in order to defeat camel chef Zi Xiao, he had to try a realm that he had never reached before. Therefore, he couldn't be careless at all. With a flash of blue light, the morning dew knife returned to the chopping board. Nien Bing didn't continue to carve. Instead, he stared at the melon cup in front of him without moving. The texture of the melon was very fine. At this moment, all he could think of was the jade-like material. With a flash of light, Nian Bing took out the cloth bag that contained the ghost condor from his space ring. The ghost condor godly blade didn't refer to a single blade, but to a set of blades. When Cha-Ji passed on the ghost condor godly blade to him, he once said that the ghost condor 9 blades were forged from deep-sea heavy silver and refined with various medicines for many years. Not only were they extremely hard, but they also had spirituality. Their spirituality could only be fully manifested under the effect of the rain dragon's dance blade technique. The limit of the blade technique could only be revealed when one's spirit and the blade were completely integrated into one. The ghost condor blades and the person who wielded them were equally important. The largest ghost condor blade jumped into Nian Bing's hand. He didn't rush to carve it. Instead, he scooped out a small bowl of rice and poured it into a clean basin. He then added water to soak it. Zixiu had already seen Nian Bing's movements. He exclaimed in his heart, "Ghost condor, godly blade." He was a little doubtful. Could it be that this brat had really mastered the rain dragon's dance blade technique? Nian Bing lifted up the 2-feet-wide plate. Just like how he had made the 9 azure divine dragons Bing Yanin, he condensed a piece of ice under the plate. The plate fell on top of the ice, and with a slight push, it immediately began to spin rapidly. Nian Bing slightly adjusted the angle of the plate's rotation so that the bottom of the plate was perfectly aligned with the center of the plate. At this moment, the rice that had been soaked in water already made a slight crackling sound. That was the sound of the rice being soaked in water. This was just a small trick for steaming rice. First, soak the rice in water for a period of time before steaming it. Not only was the rice easier to cook, but it also tasted better because it was evenly heated. While Nian Bing was doing this, his gaze never left the winter melon cup. His right hand was stretched out in front of him. The ghost condor blade, that was about 5 inches long, flickered with a faint cold light. Uncanny workmanship, dark blue powder, dragon carving phoenix blade technique cold. The first word that came out of his mouth was so sonorous. Powerful. The ghost condor blade moved at the end of the last word. With a thrust of his palm, the ghost condor blade was thrown up 5 inches. Nian Bing flipped his palm, and as if his fingers were stained with the ghost condor blade, he stabbed towards the winter melon cup. Known as the #1 divine blade in the cooking world, the dragon carving dance technique had appeared in the world. The dark blue light flickered on his fingertips. Every time he trembled, he used 9 blades. 9 was the limit. Just as Nian Bing expected, under the effect of the ghost condor blade, what fell from the winter melon cup was not debris at all, but fine blue frost mist like frost. The ghost condor blade kept flashing in the same position, and the dark blue light cluster appeared and disappeared like an explosion. At this moment, Nian Bing's mind had been completely immersed in the blade intent. He forgot about the competition, forgot about everything. In his eyes, heart, and hands, there was only the blade and the dark blue light cluster. His fingers and wrists were unusually soft. Wrapped in the blue light cluster, it was impossible to distinguish between the blade and the hand. Only the blue frost mist kept floating out and fell on the previously chopped winter melon skin in silence. Zixiu was still slapping the noodles and tenderloin on the chopping board, but his eyes were always on Nian Bing's hand. After 20 years, how could he not be excited to see the top blade technique in the cooking world again? The dragon carving dance, it was really the dragon carving dance. From Nian Bing's expression and the flickering blade light in his hand, he seemed to see the ghost chef who had suppressed him for a lifetime. The ghost chef's elegant demeanor reappeared. The corners of his eyes were already wet. Cha-Ji, Cha-Ji, it seems that not only can I not compare to you in cooking, but I also can't compare to you in teaching disciples. His left hand kept spinning the plate, making the wax gourd cup spin faster and faster. Nian Bing's mind was filled with the image of the azure dragon. Every expression of the azure dragon seemed to have come alive and turned into the blade in his hand. The azure dragon Caradirus, his roar, his attack, and his dragon roar were all so clear in Nian Bing's mind. Cha-Ji had never seen a dragon, but Nian Bing had. The azure dragon Caradiris was a real azure dragon. No matter how profound Cha-Ji's blade technique was, he only had the image of a dragon in his imagination and did not have the true essence of a dragon. Perhaps Nian Bing's blade technique had not reached his level, but in terms of mastering the essence of a dragon, he had already surpassed her. Therefore, his ghost condor was alive, and so was the dragon. Sculpting did not necessarily need a long time to achieve the best performance, especially under the influence of the ghost condor. Nian Bing's voice was filled with cold arrogance. The chant finally appeared. Where the ghost hand falls, the sky changes. It seemed that at this moment, he was the ghost condor. The faint blue light turned into a dragon and printed on the wax-gourd cup, sculpting into 100 revolving waves. The blade turned, and the faint blue light like waves constantly attacked the jade-like wax gourd in front of him. Divine work has existed since ancient times. The saber technique changed again. It went from being delicate to being wide open. Every slash of a saber brought about a deep ravine. The blade rises, the waning moon shines on the cold spring. The faint blue light suddenly emitted thousands of rays of light, and a crescent moon seemed to appear on the wax-gourd cup. The whole wax-gourd cup was completely rendered silver-white. The faint blue light flowed down like spring water, lightly moistening every corner of the wax-gourd cup. The miraculous blade technique was sublimated in an instant. The faint dragon chi kept rotating around the wax-gourd cup, and the faint blue light disappeared. Surrounding the wax-gourd cup was a white ice mist that did not disperse for a long time, making the whole wax-gourd cup more mysterious. The ghost condor had disappeared. Nian Bing's right hand was trembling slightly. In the previous sculpting, even he himself did not know how many cuts he had made. The strength of his fingers and wrist had been displayed to the limit. He knew that at least for 3 days, his right hand would not be able to do anything. However, his mood at this moment was incomparably happy, because he knew that he had succeeded. He had finally succeeded in touching the essence of the dance of the rain dragon and found the feeling when the spirit and cooking were merged as one. Not only had the dance of the rain dragon entered the realm of great success, but his understanding of cooking had also entered another realm. Panting slightly, Nian Bing looked at the wax-gourd cup in front of him, and the rotating plate gradually stopped. The ice mist also gradually disappeared. Except for Nian Bing himself and Zi Xiu, everyone showed a disappointed look, because on the jade-like wax-gourd cup, they only saw a series of intersecting, irregular patterns. Moreover, these patterns were surrounded by white wax-gourd powder. The only strange thing was that on the top edge of the wax-gourd cup, there was an additional protrusion at each of the 3 points equally divided. No one knew how it was formed, but the protrusions were strange, and there was nothing special about them at all. Compared to the gorgeous knife light, the result was obviously not satisfactory. Even Zi Mengqing returned to her seat in disappointment. Nian Bing looked at the wax-gourd cup expressionlessly and took the rice beside him. When the water was dry, he suddenly flicked his wrist, and the wet rice in the bowl suddenly flew high into the air. The morning dew dagger was released, and in an instant, 4 knife shadows were drawn in the air, completely encircling the rice. The basin where the rice was placed before made a circle in the air, and all the rice returned to the basin with a crisp sound. Not a single grain of rice escaped the net. After pouring out the rice and placing it on the chopping board, Nian Bing picked up a piece of cloth from the side and wrapped it around his right hand, then tied it tightly around his wrist. This time, he used his left hand to take out the ghost eagle dagger, which was the 3rd knife in terms of size. The blade was much smaller than the previous one, and the tip was only half the width of a willow leaf. It was a pity that he couldn't use his right hand now, but he still had to continue cooking the delicious food in front of him, so he used his left hand. This time, his target was the rice. Of course, no matter how strong his ability was, it was impossible for him to carve any patterns on the rice now. What he wanted to do was both simple and difficult. With a flash of the knife light, a grain of rice was picked up and placed into the iron basin again. At this time, the rice was no longer oval but round. With just this one pick, he completed his task. If it weren't for the fact that everyone present had amazing eyesight, they would definitely think that he was doing something useless. Rice was very brittle, and it was still brittle after being frozen. However, after being frozen, although it was brittle, it would become a lot harder. This was what Nian Bing wanted. His right hand had performed the dance of the dragon shadow, and this time his left hand performed the Jin Xian picking formula. The Jin Xian picking formula, which was good at carving words, couldn't be more simple to use. The tip of the knife kept picking, and every cut would pick out a grain of rice. As the knife light moved faster and faster, the grains of rice on the chopping board became fewer and fewer. When the last grain of rice entered the basin, there was only a pile of crumbs left on the table. Nian Bing didn't throw the crumbs away. Instead, he carefully placed them on a plate. After finishing all this, a faint smile finally appeared on his face. He looked at his wrapped right hand, and then raised his head to look at Zixio. At this time, Zixio was still kneading the dough and meat. When Nian Bing raised his head to look at him, he opened the lid of the pot at the side, and a rich aroma immediately filled the kitchen. Zixio took a deep breath and nodded, somewhat intoxicated. With a shake of his left hand, he took out a large ladle and scooped out all the ingredients in the pot. Although this looked very simple, Nian Bing's heart skipped a beat. This ladle definitely wasn't as simple as it looked on the surface. First of all, the moment the ladle struck was the moment when the broth was at its boiling point. Moreover, the ladle looked like it was only for a moment, but in fact, it flickered 7 times in a row and changed its angle 7 times in a row, allowing all the ingredients in the broth to be scooped out. This ladle completely demonstrated the exquisite culinary skills of the camel chef. Nian Bing knew that he couldn't do it. Zixio raised his head to look at Nian Bing and laughed strangely. "Kid, are you tired? I'll be done soon. It seems that we're walking on 2 extremes. I'm going to make the complicated simple, and you're going to make the simple complicated. Look carefully." He turned the surface on the chopping board horizontally, and then placed the meat on the surface. Everyone was surprised to find that the surface and the meat were exactly the same. When the meat fell on the surface, they couldn't see the bottom at all, and the meat didn't protrude in the slightest. Zixio pressed on the meat, and his right index finger reached under the surface, and the tip of his finger flicked upwards. The pieces of meat stuck to the surface of the dough flew up into the air. The pieces of dough spun in the air. Zixio glanced at Nian Bing and shouted in a deep voice, tearing the heavy eagle hands alive. In that instant, his originally somewhat obscene appearance suddenly gave off a mighty aura. His hands stretched out like lightning, and countless hand shadows appeared. A green light appeared at the tip of his fingers, and the sound of tearing silk sounded. The piece of dough was split into 2. Strangely, the toughness of the meat was no less than the surface of the dough. After it was torn into 2 pieces, it still overlapped with the original appearance, and didn't change in the slightest. Zixio's movements didn't stop. The 2 pieces of dough overlapped with each other, and were torn apart again. The sound of tearing silk sounded continuously. The surface and the meat combined, and the dough split, combined, split, and combined again. Seeing this, Nian Bing's face couldn't help but reveal a dignified expression. He was very clear that Zixio's previous kneading technique must be very special, so that the toughness of the surface and meat could reach the limit. If he didn't guess wrong, the surface and meat were now as tough as cloth. If it were him, he might not be able to tear them apart. After Zixio had torn 9 times in succession, the pieces of dough had become 512 alternating red and white strands. He didn't continue tearing. With a twist of his wrist, the strands of dough quickly spun together like fried dough twists. The red and white strands were especially eye-catching. Nian Bing secretly admired him. Just distinguishing the lines of the meat strands was already very difficult. And Zixio used the heavy eagle hands to the limit. From the very beginning, when he was handling the meat and dough, he had already used a special technique. In addition to the magical tearing formula, the slow kneading process also had an effect that wasn't inferior to his own flexible hand of separating tendons and dislocating bones. The strands of dough were rolled into a ball. The blue light in Zixio's hands suddenly brightened. Both of his hands moved at the same time, from the two ends of the dough to the middle. Fingerprints appeared one after another on the strands of dough. When the strands of dough were covered with fingerprints, he began to tear again. This time, the lines changed and a strange scene appeared. Each strand of dough turned white and red, as if they were glued together. After he finished tearing 9 more times, he grabbed one end of the dough strands and walked to the pot. His right hand reached behind his waist, and a blue short blade similar to Zi Qingming's appeared. Nianbing obviously knew what Zixio was about to use, and could not help but widen her eyes. Zixio's movements were very slow, the blade slowly moving forward, stopping an inch away from the face strands. Jade screen condensation. These 4 words were spoken one by one. From the first word, his wrist began to tremble rhythmically. And when the last word was spoken, the blade suddenly returned to its still state. But at this moment, everyone could clearly feel that the blade had come alive. An ear-piercing sound burst forth from the blade, and the original blade suddenly transformed into thousands of blades. The green light exploding in all directions, completely engulfing the face strands in front of him. The greatest characteristic of jade screen condensation was the word condensation, from stillness to movement. What it needed was an instant explosion. The noodles entered the pot, and Zixio closed the lid. The short blade in his hand was inserted into the chopping board in front of him. He looked at Nianbing and said, "The crux of jade screen condensation is the word condensation. The greatest characteristic of this blade skill is its speed. Even your rain dragon dance cannot be faster than mine, and the specialty of the rain dragon dance lies in the word dance. Dance has its own spirituality, and jade screen condensation is indeed inferior to the rain dragon dance. There's a difference in spirituality. Finally, we will compare taste." As he spoke, he opened the lid of the pot again and used his chopsticks to stir the pot a few times. After quickly adding a dozen spices, he continued, "My noodles still need to be cooked for a while. Now it's up to you." Nianbing nodded at Zixio. Although his right hand was still unable to exert its original agility, at least it was no longer trembling. He reached out and took the tofu that he had prepared in advance. This time, he moved his knife very slowly, carefully cutting the tofu into small cubes of 1 inch each. His right hand, which could not use a knife, slid across the tofu, and the soft tofu immediately turned into hard tofu cubes. Everything was ready. Now, what needed to be done was the final processing. Nianbing came to the iron pot above the fire and waved the proud heaven saber in his hand. A streak of saber chi flew out, lifting the lid that was connected to the pot and dropping it to the side. A rich aroma wafted out along with the steaming steam. The aroma of chicken, mushroom, abalone, and shark's fin had been perfectly integrated during the stewing process. Nianbing smiled slightly and used a colander to scoop out the ingredients in the pot. However, the camel chef Zixio only used 1 spoonful, while he used 3 spoonfuls to clean up all the residue in the pot. The round ice rice was put into the pot. He murmured a few incantations. His right hand, which could not exert any strength, actually directly pressed against the scorching hot pot. When his hand touched the pot, his entire hand turned purple. This was the effect of the purple flame technique. In an instant, the soup in the pot began to boil violently, bringing the round ice rice with it. Nianbing took a pair of chopsticks with his left hand and raised his head to smile at Zixio. He reached out to the top of the pot and put the chopsticks into the pot, stirring it slightly. His hands were very rhythmic. Gradually, under the influence of Nianbing's steady left hand, a whirlpool began to appear on the surface of the water, but the original boiling disappeared. His right hand continued to heat up, while his left hand continued to spin. The soup, which had long exceeded the boiling point, was no longer boiling. The beads of rice were evenly distributed in every corner of the pot, spinning rapidly with the whirlpool. Nianbing's left hand had already ignited a ball of flame, keeping the surrounding scorching steam outside. Zixio's whole body trembled, and he said with some astonishment, "The mysterious jade hand that breaks water and protects face should not be the flaming hand that breaks water and protects face." When did Zhaji learn this move? Nian Bing's hands did not stop moving. He raised his head and smiled. This is not what my master taught me. In fact, I'm just following his example. I haven't been able to understand the real rhythm of the mysterious jade hand that breaks water and protects face. However, the effect of doing this is much better than directly boiling it. It can make the heat more uniform. Cooking porridge required about an hour to completely soften the rice into porridge. However, with the help of the purple flame technique, Nian Bing only used a quarter of the time to achieve his goal. The chopsticks left the water, and he put the tofu into the pot. He took the bamboo shoots from the prepared ingredients. With the rapid swinging of the proud heaven blade, the bamboo shoots turned into small green cubes and entered the pot. Nian Bing put both of his hands on the iron pot and used the purple flame technique to rapidly heat them up. Chapter 54. Senior Zixio, we can serve the pot together. As he spoke, he raised both his hands that were infused with the purple flame technique and swept them towards the prepared wintermelon cup. The scorching air swept across the wintermelon cup, and the layer of frost on the wintermelon cup melted like snow. The wintermelon powder floated into a neat circle under the wintermelon cup, and the wintermelon cup regained its original emerald green color. Under the effect of the scorching purple flame technique, the entire wintermelon cup was so green that it seemed like water was about to drip out. It really looked like a moving piece of jade. At this moment, everyone's eyes widened because they all discovered that they had made a mistake. How could there be a mistake when the ghost-carving godly blade was out? If there really was a mistake, then it wouldn't be the ghost-carving godly blade. The surface of the wintermelon cup wasn't an ordinary carving, but a relief carving. The entire wintermelon cup was thinner by half an inch. On the surface, there were 9 azure dragons. Each of them was so lifelike that even their scales could be clearly seen. What surprised Camel Chef Zixio was that these 9 azure dragons seemed to be alive. Each of them had a different form. Some spread their wings to attack. Some stretched out their claws to grab something. Some flapped their wings to fly. Some raised their heads to roar. And some rode the clouds. The 9 azure dragons intertwined without a trace of flaw or disorder. The 3 protruding spots on the top of the wintermelon cup were clearly 3 dragon heads. Even the dragon whiskers were clearly there. They were formed from the wintermelon carved from other places. After the baptism of ice and fire, they had completely fused into one. For a moment, the entire kitchen was silent. Even Nian Bing's eyes revealed an intoxicated look. It was time to serve the pot. Before Nian Bing took the pot out, he added some salt to the pot. Only then did he pour the white and green kanji liquid into the wintermelon cup. His movements were very careful, for fear of damaging any part of the wintermelon cup. The white rice that was like tiny pearls was still in the process of melting. The green bamboo shoots were like jade, and the tofu that was as smooth as white jade. He had made a kanji dish. Zixio and Nian Bing took the pot out at the same time. His kanji was golden red and had a rich aroma as it was poured into a large bowl. Red, gold, and white colors intertwined. Although it wasn't as gorgeous as Nian Bing's, it wasn't as beautiful as Nian Bing's. But no one would doubt its deliciousness. The 2 of them each took their own works to the 5 people who were watching the competition. Feng Nu looked at Nian Bing blankly. Can this thing be eaten? Nian Bing was stunned for a moment before she laughed. Are you doubting my skills? Don't worry, there's no poison. Feng Nu shook her head and said, No, I can't bear to eat it. What's the name of this dish? Nian Bing smiled and said, Don't worry and eat. If you like it, I'll make more for you in the future. The name of this dish is Supreme 9 Dragons Cauldron of Ice and Fire 9 Heavens. Zixio said grumpily. The Supreme 9 Dragons Cauldron? It's obviously the pearl jade, white jade porridge that old Devil Zhaji is good at. Nian Bing didn't get angry at all. She smiled and said, That's indeed the case. It's just that there are some changes. Senior's bowl should be the pink golden jade noodles that my master highly admires. Zixio snorted and said, Come, let's all have a taste. I haven't cooked for a long time. I wonder if I've regressed. Everyone started to eat at the same time. Zixio's expression immediately darkened. Because everyone's target was Nian Bing's Supreme 9 Dragons Cauldron, but no one touched his pink golden jade noodles. But the honest and straightforward Zi Qingjian was a kind person. Seeing that no one touched his uncle's noodles, he retracted the spoon that was reaching for the supreme Nine Dragons cauldron and turned to eat the noodles. Nian Bing walked to Zi Xiu's side and said with a smile, "Senior, if you don't mind, let's judge each other. Although the noodles are simple, what you make is definitely different." His flattery made Zi Xiu's expression look better. He nodded and started to eat each other's dishes. No one said anything, not even cheering, because everyone was immersed in eating. Very quickly, Nian Bing's supreme Nine Dragons cauldron was only left with the cauldron. Even she didn't have time to take a bite. What surprised everyone was that the one who ate the most was actually the principal of Lan Meng Academy, Purple Dream. He fully displayed his strength as a swordsman, and his spoon was as fast as lightning. He wasn't stingy at all as he stuffed the delicacies into his mouth. "Purple Dream, are you bullying others just because you're fast? This is what my disciple made for me." The others didn't dare to criticize, but Dark Knight wasn't polite. Among the people who were fighting over the pearl jadeite, white jade kanji, only he didn't know martial arts. Magic was completely useless at this time, and he became the one who ate the least. After eating a small bowl of Zi Xiu's pink golden jade noodles, Nian Bing turned around and faced Zi Xiu. "Senior, the noodles that you made were complete in terms of color, aroma, taste, meaning, and form. Especially the way you used the heavy eagle claw technique. I was defeated. No matter what, I can't make such delicious noodles. Without the method of breaking water to protect the surface, such fine noodles actually didn't stick together at all. And because the noodles themselves are extremely tough, during the extremely fine process, the heat was just right. Every strand completely blended into the rich fragrance of the duck soup and foie gras. It's indeed a top-grade delicacy." Zi Xiu smiled indifferently and said, "Nian Bing, who do you think won this competition?" Nian Bing hesitated for a moment and said, "Senior, to be precise, I won. Your work and my Supreme Nine Dragons cauldron both have their own characteristics in terms of fragrance. However, your duck and foie gras soup is expensive because of its innovation. The raw materials are much cheaper than mine, but it can produce a fragrance that's on par with mine. Therefore, in terms of fragrance, you win. And in terms of the taste of the noodles, through your heavy eagle hands, it's also slightly better than my pearl jadeite, white jade kanji. However, the degree of deliciousness of the two is extremely close. In these two aspects, you win. Am I right?" Zi Xiu smiled and said, "Kid, in terms of cooking, you indeed have outstanding talent. Not bad. What you said is very pertinent, but it's also a bit modest. I've tasted your kanji. If it's an ordinary pearl jadeite, white jade kanji, I'm really confident that it's better than yours in terms of taste. However, yours is completely different. As expected of the 9 heavens of ice and fire, through a special method of heating and freezing the materials, the taste of these materials is completely different. I can distinguish 81 changes among them. This is also your 9 heavens of ice and fire. With magic in the kitchen, it can indeed make the taste of the delicacies ever-changing. No wonder you're so confident. If you lose, you lose. You don't have to cover up anything for me." Nian Bing looked at Zi Xiu, who admitted defeat calmly, and the admiration in her heart increased. She said respectfully, "Junior's cooking skills are still lacking. If I didn't use magic to take advantage of it, it would be impossible for me to compare to Senior. This time, it was just a fluke." Zi Xiu shook his head and said, "How can there be so much luck? Although magic in the kitchen can produce unique effects, but without a long period of practice and comprehension, how can you combine magic and cooking so well? However, there are still some flaws in it. The process of connecting them is not delicate enough. Also, you're still a little rough in handling the materials. You have to pay more attention in the future. Your appearance will definitely cause a great change in the cooking world in the future. As for what will become of it, I don't know. Nian Bing, although your 9 heavens of ice and fire is very magical, this is not what surprised me the most. After all, magic in the kitchen itself has its own advantages. Do you know? In fact, when you completely displayed the dance of the rain dragon, I knew that I had lost. Even if I can win against you in terms of fragrance and taste, but in terms of color, shape, and meaning, I can't compare to your supreme Nine Dragons Cauldron. It's just that I didn't expect it. Your Dance of the Rain Dragon has already surpassed your master. Nian Bing laughed bitterly. Senior, you praise me too much. Perhaps you don't believe me, but if I were to do it again, I would definitely not be able to do the same thing. Just now, in the process of carving, I completely integrated into a strange domain. Even I don't know how many times I slashed, but the moment I finished, I clearly felt that I had succeeded. Zixio smiled and said, feeling is very important. Don't belittle yourself. You have already entered the realm of cooking with enlightenment. Perhaps your knife skills are not as exquisite as your master's, but in terms of understanding of the Dance of the Rain Dragon, your master can't compare to you. To have such achievements at such a young age, you will definitely be the continent's #1 chef in the future. Picking up the last piece of tofu from a bowl, he put it in his mouth and chewed with satisfaction. He said somewhat vaguely, "This tofu is really good." Tofu is originally not easy to taste, but after being frozen by you, although there is no change on the surface, many holes have appeared on the inside, which can fully absorb the freshness of the broth. Moreover, under extreme heat, there is no situation of it breaking, but it is even more chewy. It is indeed delicious. Nian Bing, that little bit of salt you added at the end, played the role of painting the dragon, making the feeling of ice and fire become more intense. This point must be carried forward. Remember, salt is the king of all flavors. Any flavor with salt added will become different. Nian Bing nodded sincerely and said, "Thank you, Senior." Senior, are you? Zixio naturally knew what Nian Bing wanted to ask. Using his Do Chi to force his voice into a line, he said something to him. After a while, Nian Bing's eyes revealed a look of shock. How is this possible? That person's identity. Zixio made a Nian Bing gesture to keep quiet and said with a smile, "Didn't you say in class that nothing is impossible? Now you understand why your master did not let you take revenge for him. The other person's identity is so troublesome. He does not want anything to happen to his precious disciple. Moreover, your master probably did not forget his feelings for that person until the day he died." Nian Bing was somewhat at a loss. If it was said that her master had not forgotten his feelings for that woman, then was it right for her to take revenge for him? She shook her head. Forget it. Whether or not it was to take revenge for her master, she still had to see that woman. Perhaps, from her attitude, she could make a lot of decisions. Thinking of this, she said to Camel Chef Zixio, "Senior, thank you for telling me this. If you don't mind, I would like to eat some more pink golden jade noodles." Zixio smiled mischievously and said, I'm afraid it won't be your turn. Turn around and take a look." Nian Bing was stunned for a moment. When she turned around, she saw that the eyes of the people who had surrounded her supreme Nine Dragons Cauldron had all fallen on the pink golden jade noodles in front of her. Their eyes were filled with desire for food, and Nian Bing felt a chill. She hurriedly took a step back and made a gesture of invitation. This time, the one who moved the fastest was Feng Nu. With a wave of her chopsticks, a bowl of noodles was ready. Nian Bing suddenly discovered that in front of delicious food, the word virtuous had no meaning at all. Not to mention Feng Nu, even the always cold and aloof Zi Qingming acted as if she was facing a great enemy, quickly snatching up the delicious noodles. Zixio walked around the crowd and came before Nian Bing's supreme Nine Dragons Cauldron, which only had a winter melon left. He moved closer to take a closer look and couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Everything was so exquisite and vivid. The 9 green dragons were flawless and looked so delicious. It was a pity that there wasn't even a speck of the pearl and jade kanji left in the cauldron. Even the inner walls of the winter melon had been scratched a little. He sighed softly and couldn't help but say, if only this was really made of jade, it could definitely become a rare treasure. It is worthy of being the continent's #1 knife skill. Even if my jade screen dual congeal is more exquisite, it is impossible to display the strength of the dragon dance. Nian Bing, you have really finished your apprenticeship. The supreme 9 dragons cauldron of ice and fire 9 heavens, what a good name. Nian Bing glanced at Zixio and said, Senior, the reason I was so anxious to compete with you this time is because I am afraid I will have to leave this place soon. A friend of mine has asked me to do something, and I must do it quickly. As she said this, she walked over to the chopping board and put her 3 kitchen knives back in her space ring. A trace of disappointment appeared in Zixio's eyes. You're leaving already? I asked you to be the knife skill teacher of the cooking department, but you still haven't fulfilled your duties as a teacher. Nian Bing smiled faintly and said, Senior, I like the environment here very much. I especially like to compare notes with you and Teacher Hei Yi. If I fulfill my wish in the future, I will definitely return. Zixio's eyes flashed, and he firmly patted Nian Bing's shoulder with his large hand. As an excellent chef, all kinds of experiences are essential. Go. I will not stop you from moving forward. The world of cooking that you enter is your world. However, you must remember, no matter what level your culinary skills have reached, you must not have the slightest bit of arrogance. Otherwise, you will definitely encounter setbacks, just like your master. It was because of a moment of carelessness that he looked down on his opponent and only casually cooked a few dishes. Otherwise, even if the opponent had the assistance of magic, how could his culinary skills compare to the ghost chef? Nian Bing nodded and said, Thank you. I will definitely remember your words. Zixio asked, When do you plan to leave? Nian Bing thought for a moment and said, Today. Today Feng Nu came to the school to challenge me. I have already revealed my dual elemental magic. If I stay any longer, I will inevitably encounter some unnecessary trouble. Chef Luo and Zixio nodded and said, All right then. You will leave sooner or later. There is no way to make you stay. I will wait for you. I hope that when the time comes, you can take over my position. Then I can live a carefree and happy life for a few years. Nian Bing chuckled and said in a low voice, Aren't you carefree and happy enough now? Zixio's eyes flashed with a lustful light. He glanced at Feng Nu, who was constantly stuffing the pink and jade-like noodles into her mouth. Nian Bing said, Kid, when you need to make a move, you should make a move. I have seen countless women in my life, but I have never met such a high quality. She seems to have a good impression of you. Find a chance to get her into bed. Women, after all, will have a very deep impression of their first man. As long as your skills are good enough, you will not be afraid that she will leave you. Looking at your appearance, you must still be a little virgin. The taste of a beautiful woman is definitely the best in the world. No matter how good the food is, it will be delicious. Nian Bing only fully understood Zixio's words a few years later. However, at that time, he was already the head of a generation in the culinary world. After that, he researched a third emotion. I'm so full. This trip was not in vain. Nian Bing, the food you cook is so delicious. I almost can't bear to leave you. Feng Nu put down the bowl in satisfaction and looked at Nian Bing. Her eyes were full of smiles. Perhaps due to Zixio's influence, Nian Bing took 2 steps forward and stood in front of Feng Nu. She said in a low voice, I won. Shouldn't you fulfill your promise and let me kiss you? Feng Nu giggled and said, Did I promise you anything? I only said that if you won, I would consider it. Besides, I have already kissed you before. Consider it as an advance payment. Nian Bing said unhappily, How can that be considered an advance payment? Anyway, you owe me once. All right, let's not talk about this first. When do you plan to leave? Where are you going? Feng Nu looked at the people around her and said, Let's go now. I have already achieved my goal and eaten so much good food. It's time to leave. If fate wills it, we will meet again. Nian Bing looked at Feng Nu dejectedly and said, I'm leaving too. I'm going to All City. It would be nice if we were going the same way. Feng Nu looked at him in surprise and said, You're not going to continue learning here? Nian Bing shook his head and said, No, I've already learned a lot in the 3 months I've been here. It's time to leave. Feng Nu smiled, a playful look in her beautiful eyes. Are you really going to All City for something? Nian Bing was stunned for a moment, but he reacted quickly and said in surprise, Are you going there too? Feng Nu smiled and said, Yes. If it wasn't for the fact that I've never revealed my whereabouts to anyone, I would definitely think that you're going with me on purpose. At this point, She suddenly realized that she had misspoken and her face turned red. Nian Bing laughed and said, "You're so beautiful. Even if it's for you, it's nothing. Let's go then. I don't have anything to pack." Saying that, he walked in front of Purple Dream and said, "Principal, I think I'll be leaving." Purple Dream smiled and looked at Nian Bing and then at Feng Nu. "Thank you for the delicious food you brought us today. It's a pity that I don't know when I'll be able to eat it again." "No, you're not allowed to leave." The one who spoke was Ye. He had just wiped the soup off his mouth. Nian Bing was stunned for a moment and said, "Teacher, I really have something to do and have to leave." Ye looked at him coldly and stretched out his right hand. "You've been here for a few months and you haven't paid your tuition fees yet. Pay your tuition fees before you leave." As soon as he said that, even he couldn't help but laugh. Nian Bing thought for a moment and stretched out his right hand. With a flash of light, a small box appeared in his hand. He handed it to Ye and said with a smile, "Teacher, thank you for your guidance these days. This will be my tuition fees. Please accept it." Ye saw that the box was made of lead, and his eyes were filled with doubt. He looked at Nian Bing and took the box. "What is it?" Nian Bing smiled and said, "Naturally, it's something worthy of your status. You'll know when you open it." Ye looked at Nian Bing and slowly opened the box. In an instant, the kitchen that had returned to normal due to the disappearance of the 3 treasured swords was completely enveloped by a golden light. The peaceful aura and the feeling of holiness filled everyone's body. Everyone's eyes were focused on the box in Ye's hand. Ye looked at the golden gem in the box in shock. As a sorcerer, how could he not recognize it? Heavens, how many good things do you have on you? This is the first time I've seen such a pure holy light stone and such a big one. Where did you get it from? Nian Bing said, "I won in a bet." "Teacher, although you don't cultivate light magic, with it by your side, you'll be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort." He looked at the gentle golden light, and a look of intoxication appeared in his eyes. He took a deep breath, closed the box, and stuffed it back into Nian Bing's hands. "No, this is too precious for me. Compared to me, you need it more. My magic has already been finalized. No matter how bad it is, I won't be able to reach the realm of Archmage. But you're different. This kind of stabilizing thing is extremely useful for you. You should wear it on your body often when you cultivate. With the effects of your jade, you won't have to worry about ice and fire being disobedient. Father, Big Brother, and I are also going to All-In City." Zi Qingming's voice suddenly sounded at this time. Her expression had become very calm. Her purple eyes were like water, without the slightest trace of emotion. Zi Xiu said, "Little Ming, what are you doing? You've seen Nian Bing's cooking skills today. It's not time for you to graduate yet." Zi Qingming shook her head and said, "No, second uncle, I'm not going to improve my cooking skills. Big Brother and I are going to join the army. This semester's classes will end in 2 days. Big Brother and I have long since planned to do this. The rise and fall of the country is the responsibility of everyone. Our Ottoman Empire has been bullied by Hua Rong and Chilu. Big Brother and I are going to do our part for the country." Zi Xiu frowned and said, "You two are the only descendants of our Zi family. If you both join the army and something happens, who will take care of us?" "No, I don't agree. It's too dangerous. Forget it. Let them go. Young people should see more and experience more. The outside world will give them more experience and training." Zi Ming's attitude was the complete opposite of Zi Xiu's. Her eyes were filled with kindness. "You can go, but I don't want you to use your status as Lanming Academy to make a fuss. Since you're going to join the army, you have to start from the bottom. Only by understanding the soldiers at every level will you be of more help in the future. Do you understand what I mean?" Zi Qingjian said loudly, "Dad, don't worry. Little sister and I will definitely not lose face for Lanming Academy. Brother Nian Bing, let's go together. Wait for us for a while. We'll prepare some things and be back soon." Since Zi Qingjian had said so, Nian Bing couldn't refuse. However, he was somewhat dissatisfied in his heart. It wasn't easy to get a chance to be alone with Feng Nu, but he was defeated just like that. He really couldn't accept it. Feng Nu looked at Nian Bing with a smile that wasn't a smile and said, It looks like our journey will be very lively. The weather had already turned cold. Although the coldest month of the month had passed, the cold wind was still bone-chilling. The bare tree trunks on both sides of the road looked even more bleak. The biting cold northern wind blew, causing everyone's clothes to flutter. The sky today was a little gloomy. Although it wasn't snowing, it didn't feel good at all. This kind of gloomy weather easily made people feel depressed. 2 hours ago, Nian Bing, Feng Nu, and Zi Qingjian bid farewell to Zi Ming, Zi Xiu, and Hai. They left the city of the academy, Lan Ming, and stepped on the road to Ao Lan City. They had already walked for 2 hours, but the four of them didn't speak. Although Nian Bing's physical strength was a little weak, Feng Nu and the other two didn't rely on martial arts techniques to travel quickly. Thus, although they were a little tired, they could still hold on. In the gloomy weather and the oppressive atmosphere, the first one to lose, it wasn't the straightforward Zi Qingjian. Ever since they left the academy, Zi Qingjian would occasionally sneak a glance at Feng Nu. He walked with a lot on his mind. It wasn't clear whether it was because he was a little disappointed to leave his home or because of some other reason. Feng Nu, I have something to ask you. The first to speak was still Nian Bing. Outside of the academy, he had been thinking about how to face the Zi Qingjian siblings. It would be best if he could find a way to avoid traveling with them. He still had a good impression of Zi Qingjian, but that unpredictable temperament of Zi Qingming made him very sensitive. Nian Bing didn't have a good impression of a girl with a bad temper. Feng Nu walked forward as she said, I knew you would ask. Your guess is correct. I lied to you when we first met, but Senior Hua Tian can indeed be considered my master. I didn't lie about the cause of his death. As for the rest, can you not ask? When the time comes, I will naturally tell you. Nian Bing looked at Feng Nu's calm expression and sighed inwardly. He knew that it was useless for him to ask. Feng Nu was about the same age as him, but had strength close to swordsman's. Just this point alone was not simple, especially when Feng Nu had said that she had the 9 separations body. What did that mean? Feng Nu seemed to feel Nian Bing's dissatisfaction. She turned her head to look at him and smiled. Don't you also have secrets in your heart? We could be considered the same, right? Nian Bing smiled faintly and said, If I use my secret to exchange for your secret, I wonder if you'll agree to it? Feng Nu laughed. Come on, I don't believe you'll be willing to tell me your secret. You look honest on the surface, but you're more cunning than anyone else. Who knows if you're just making up a story to trick me? Nian Bing pretended to be wronged. I'm innocent. Am I that kind of person? Feng Nu snorted. Aren't you? Not to mention anything else, just the ice goddess stone and the flame god stone on your body. I'm afraid you won't be able to explain it clearly. Nian Bing was speechless. Indeed, these 2 gems were given to him by his parents. They represented a story, and it was a story that was closely related to him. Okay, I won't ask you anymore. However, your 9 separations Do Chi has completely surpassed Senior Hua Tian. It really makes me feel strange. Feng Nu glanced at Nian Bing. Simply speaking, Hua Tian's 9 separations Do Chi should have been learned from my elder. The reason why he taught me the forging technique and sacrificed himself to forge the sword was to return a favor. That's all I can say. I don't want you to misunderstand anything. Nian Bing's heart moved. Connecting the previous events, his thoughts became clearer. He smiled and said, Feng Nu, Brother Qingjian, let's go to the front and rest for a while.